Stop talking about comic books or I'll kill you. I don't care if the Hulk could defeat the Man of Steel. I'm gonna rearrange your face if you continue to debate whether Logan's claws could pierce Steve Rogers' shield. I just couldn't care less if they bring back Kraven. And I don't care if Spider-Man's a clone. Stop spending all our cash on back issues of The Flash, or I swear to God you're gonna spend your twilight years alone. You can call them graphic novels. They're still just plain old comic books to me. And I don't see why you must always ceaselessly discuss the post-zero-hour continuity. For the last time, I won't read those curvy X-Men. You know that I prefer the work he did for DC. And if you don't want to die, you'll lose that on the street price guide, comic buyer's guide, and Wizard magazine. But please get the new Invisibles for me.
Good evening, everybody. Today we have a special episode. We are going to be reviewing a classic in comic literature, and the format is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be a roundtable discussion. All of us have read the book. There isn't going to be a nominal host, though I will try to move everybody along through the topics gradually as we all speak together about everything we read and saw and thought about this work of comic history. Tonight's book is going to be All-Star Superman, and we are going to review it in a roundtable format, something that we haven't done before. So I'm hoping that everybody will enjoy this. This will be a longer review than perhaps what you're used to. We plan to go through some of the deeper nuances within this story and see exactly how it goes and how people respond to it. So with that, hello to everybody in the chat, but I would like to bring on at this point everybody in our roundtable. So please welcome Super Pug,
Yo.
Twitless,
Welcome to NPR.
and Spirit Scar.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello. Hello to all of you. So tonight we're going to be discussing All-Star Superman. It came out some time ago, but a lot of people have had a chance to have their say on this book, and it's been quite established as one of the quintessential Superman stories. So we thought that this would be an interesting beginning to this roundtable discussion format. A book that many people will be familiar with already, have seen probably many reviews on from YouTube, or there was a cartoon series as well that was produced from this storyline. So with that, we'd like to delve into some of the points about this story and see exactly how everybody felt and whether or not they felt that this praise that it's been receiving was actually warranted. So I will bring up quickly an image. And first I'd like to mention, though, that today Richard Donner passed away. So we are dedicating this review to him. As you may know, he directed the first two Superman films. He established the lore of Superman in the public's mind, as well as the formula for how to make a comic book movie. So we're very grateful to his contributions to this character. And I think it's poignant that today's the day that he passed away, just as we were planning to review this story.
It is serendipitous, yes.
Yep.
I'd say it's rather ominous.
Well,
if the quaff was here, he'd say, "Rip Richard Donner." Thanks,
yeah.
sir.
So, now, all of you have, of course, prepared for this review, read through the story. There's several things to address about it. It's written by Grant Morrison, drawn by Frank Quietly. At the time, there was a lot of interest for the story, and now looking at it in retrospective, there's a couple of questions I guess people would have about this book. I guess we could begin. For each of you, after reading through all 12 issues and preparing for this review, what did you feel that this story actually meant to each of you as a Superman story?
I thought it was a good Superman story. I'd never read it before. I only read it for the first time over the past few days. I did see the DC animated movie that was based on the comic book series. There's some differences in that movie, but yeah.
I enjoyed it personally. I thought it was a very interesting story. A lot of imagination put into it. There was a lot of science fantasy, which I guess is a very big part of this character. He goes to different worlds, and there's things that reference aspects of science fiction, but are not quite representative. And then there's things that are just complete fantasy being explored. But there's also traits that they touched on about the character himself, and that's one of the things I was hoping to delve into a little bit more with this review.
Yeah, I feel like Morrison really captures these mythic qualities, but also really embraces like some sci-fi pulp qualities from the 1950s Superman comics were very sci-fi pulpy, with him going to alien worlds and other dimensions and robots, and even Lex Luthor back then was a mad scientist before he was the megalomaniac, corporate CEO. That what came about more like 70s, 80s. So he's kind of culling together all these elements to make this archetypal character that's been around for decades.
I'm conflicted. I literally have two minds on this one. It's taken me a while to even form my thoughts on it. I think if I were to sum it up, I would say it has really good moments that I like, but that the whole is not as good as the sum of its parts, I think is where I'm falling on it.
Yeah, I think it's a good Superman story, like it's a good Superman comic book, but I'm not sure if it is a good comic book itself. And
See,
I guess
very good.
Yeah, so
Well,
I guess we could get into it.
I'm actually the
think the
opposite.
story-
I feel like it's a good comic. I just don't think it's a Superman story.
The storytelling is like going for like a more epic, mythic kind of tone. So you see these big panels and these epic like images. A lot of the images here are iconic. It's Superman kissing Lois on the moon and things like that. Yes, Smug, I'm using that word.
You're smug. It's iconic.
Oh, it's iconic. Oh no, I'm getting triggers, flashbacks.
I think it is. It works as a comic book. I think it works as so many times when people write limited series, they say like, "Oh, it was written for the trades," and they complain about that. They knew this was going to be collected as a graphic novel, but each issue feels like a satisfying single issue story. But the overarching themes are there. We haven't really gone into what the plot of it is, but it does loom and it does grow, and there is that time on Clark Kent / Superman, and I feel this is. I mean, if no normie is ever going to read a Superman comic because there's just too much there. Like, what do you give them? Do you give them the Doomsday Run or something like that? You could give someone who's never read a comic book or a Superman comic, you could give them All-Star Superman, and they would have the flavor or the essence of Superman throughout the decades. They could have it in this book. That's my feelings about the book, anyway.
I do agree with that. The only Superman stories I've ever read was like the Bendis run from like a few years ago on Man of Steel, that 6-issue miniseries.
Oh,
yeah, it was god awful.
Why?
So
Why? I would hand
Yeah.
it was Superman Birthright. That's kind of I think a good starter one, or one of Burns runs. I think would be a good starter point. There's a lot of good starter points.
Yeah, I read the Jurgen stuff and Byrne stuff and some of the stuff from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah,
I felt like this was a really good comic. Like I like Grant Morrison's writing, and I think he knows how to make a well crafted and inject a lot of ingenuity into his story. Like there are things here that you just don't see typically in a lot of other comics. He's an ideas factory, but
yeah, that is true.
right, and so he injects a lot of material that you can work from. But did it feel like a Superman story to me? Not really, honestly.
Yeah, that's where I fall on it. Yeah.
To me, there was a bit this juxtaposition of Superman being a human god, and how much of him was human and how much of him was godlike. That was kind of explored throughout the story, and I felt very detached from the character through most of it, and that's not the way I felt about Superman before.
Right. So I think the way, because it took me taken me a while to really kind of think through this. And I really appreciate this review because it's really made me think about, Grant Morrison, Superman in particular. There's a really great essay that Umberto Eco wrote. I recommend everyone check that out. It's called The Myth of the Superman. And he really kind of crystallized some of my feelings a bit, which is the fact that the thing that makes Superman so good for his particular audience is the fact that he kind of walks this very vague line between the mythic and the real. And the more mythic you go, the more he loses kind of the more personal. And the issue I had with this is the fact that I think I have some fundamental philosophical differences with Grant Morrison, and those differences kind of come out in All-Star Superman. So this is definitely a story about what I would say. This is All-Star Superman is a story about a Superman, an Ubermensch, a godlike man, and Grant Morrison, in his book Super Gods, definitely says that he was channeling the sun god, the star child, and all the rest of that. But that's not necessarily the Superman that was beloved by the American audience as it progressed. I think some of that is actually tied to the fact that Grant Morrison he's from Scotland. He wrote All-Star Superman, I believe, looking at a loch in Scotland. And so there are certain resonances that I think he just can't quite pick up on, not being an American. And so instead of that, he channels the more grand scope, mythic symbolism. And so this book, it has that in spades. And so there's a lot of cool, interesting things about that. But ultimately, like I said, there's just something that just feels off about it. So like I said, it's definitely a story about a Superman, but not what I would say the Superman, if that makes any sense.
I disagree. I think you really feel his humanity in this. Like he is godlike,
I agree with Spirit,
but he doesn't feel like above humans. Like he doesn't look down on humans as lesser than. And as we go into the review, like later on, I think I have a page that I sent to you, well read. But his humanity comes across. You feel his heart. You feel how much he's in love with Lois Lane, how much he cares about his friends, how much he loves his father, Jonathan Kent, and his Kryptonian father. But the issue with he goes back in, well, spoiler alert, I guess this whole thing is spoilers, but when he goes back in time and to have those last moments with his father, those are all very human moments. And you see his humanity really pouring through. I think you see his humanity here more so than many other Superman stories where he's just slugfest with monster of the month,
Right, but that's
I agree. I agree with Spirit Scar. Like when you well read mentioned being detached from the character, I think this is probably the most relatable you could ever be to Superman because he's literally mortal now. He's been reduced to humanity's problem, which is he's on a clock. He's no longer the Superman. He is going to die, and there's a lot of little moments throughout the series, especially like with Crypto and the Sun Eater, where you get to see like, I guess his empathy, like a wider range of emotions from him rather than just the cold, stern-faced Man of Steel going around kicking ass and saving people.
Have we told the audience what the basic setup of the story is about him flying too close to the sun?
Right. So this is actually good that we have a bit of a debate here, actually, about the way the character was handled going into the synopsis. So we've established how we've all felt about it. I particularly disagree on the point with the relationship between Lois. I thought Lois was probably my least favorite character, and the relationship was probably one of the worst aspects of this story. But we can start going through the synopsis, and we can see exactly how each of our points actually are reflected in some of these individual issues that we're discussing here. So going to issue 1, Would anyone like to give a brief overview of what exactly is established in this story and what kind of Superman story this is going to be that we're going to be talking about that spanned 12 issues?
I think it should be communicated. This is a self-contained Superman story. It's not in the regular DC continuity. So I think people should be aware of that before diving in. But Twiddless, you want to summarize the first issue?
I mean, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Let's see if Joe's good at summarizing things. So there's a manned mission to the sun, and the scientist, wasn't it Leo Quintum is his name, right? So they're doing this mission, but then something goes out of control. There's a stowaway on the ship who turns out it's a genetically engineered monster being controlled by Lex Luthor, who's in the custody of the military doing work for them. But so Superman comes in to save the day as they're right above the sun. So he saves the crew from this monster. But in doing so, he's right like in the sun, and the solar radiation just overwhelms his whole body, overwhelms his whole cells, and essentially gives him a solar cancer that accelerates
cellular
his
apoptosis.
deterioration. Mm. And so then he learns this, and the scientist discusses with him, tells him he has this finite time left to live, and then what he does from there, and the choices he makes, and what he chooses to do, and how he, at this point in the story, this page, Lois Lane doesn't know that Clark Kent is Superman. So now that he learns that he's dying, he decides to tell her. So this is its own reality where Lois Lane doesn't know this yet. He's revealing this to her. And
so I thought in the first issue they jumped really fast into story tropes. Lois Lane kind of being told that he's Superman and just immediately accepting it. And then Lex, of course.
Well, she doesn't believe it for a long time, though. Remember, like the next issue, she keeps doubting it, and
yeah, but she's dating Superman, and it's like it took her a day to get over it. So I don't know. Like, to me, that just seemed bizarre. And it's like he was relying on a lot of the established continuity to jump through some of these story points. And you can see, like in the first couple of pages, he does this really minimalist approach of telling Superman's story. Dead planet, doomed scientists, Hope, which is them releasing the craft that's carrying the infant Superman, and loving parents. And that's basically all he does to give you the founding established characteristics of Superman's origin.
An opening montage.
I didn't really think too much of the first issue, other than it basically sets up the overall plot arc of Superman slowly dying, and the only really thing of like note in it is him revealing to Lois Lane at the end of the first issue that Clark Kent is Superman.
Right.
So, because this is again an Elseworld story, again, this kind of also disconnects it a bit for me, because it's a story we can't. How do I put this? It's a story about Superman, but most of the time when people think of Superman, they think about his ongoing series, and they think about a particular style of story. It's genre fiction. It's like picking up a cozy mystery. This is something different. And like I said, I think that's actually has some of the appeal that it has for people on this panel and people who like the book, because this is a story that a few people have told before, or similarly, because Alan Moore did it with Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, and some people in, I think, the 60s did some similar Elseworld stories as well with what happens if Superman was killed by Lex Luthor. But basically, this is a story ultimately about the death of Superman, in a sense. It's kind of in a way, it's sort of a send-off. But it is a loving send-off. I do really have to highlight the tone of this work. It's something that I do think I did warm up to, at least. And I do appreciate that, as opposed to Warren Ellis, who seems to hate what he writes. Grant Morrison, even though I think he fundamentally misunderstands Superman at places, Grant Morrison very clearly likes what he writes. And you can see it in his interviews. You can see it in the books that he's written on the subject. He loves this stuff. And that love does come out in this book.
Well, All-Star Superman kind of feels like a love letter to Superman from Grant Morrison.
It is. Yeah, definitely.
It also introduces this character that I'm going to quickly show here, the businessman Quintum. And he seems to have a key. Oh, sorry, sharing too many things. He also seems to have a key role throughout this story, that he's going to be sequencing Superman's DNA. Sorry, everybody. And they're trying to create people that will have similar capabilities to superpowered beings like Superman. But he's benevolent in most of this story, which I thought was an interesting way to present this character. He's an ally and an asset for Superman throughout.
He's the juxtaposition of Lex Luthor. He's a benevolent scientist as opposed to the mad scientist, right?
Yes.
It's Grant Morrison with hair.
Another thing that this first issue introduces is that there's an implicit relationship between Superman and the sun. Of course, the sun makes Superman who he is, and in this story, the sun is also what's killing him ultimately. So there is this this symbiotic, established interaction between the sun and Superman, which I think plays out all the way towards the end of the series in the climax, which I thought was interesting, particularly when in issue 12, who he's fighting against. So there's a lot of references to Superman's relation to the sun.
Yeah, Morrison has spoken about just throughout history and mythologies of different solar deities, and obviously Superman gets his powers from the yellow sun, so it's just natural to do that. And the All-Star line was started with All-Star Batman, but then it was given that title, so then they decided to go into that literally as the Superman and the star and becoming a star ultimately.
So with issue 2, things start to get a bit more interesting, other than just doing establishing story beats. Would you like to give us the next synopsis, Super Pig?
Well, Lois now knows that Clark Kent is Superman. Superman flies her to the Fortress of Solitude, where he, I guess, is trying to cement the relationship, maybe explaining to her why he does what he does, and shows off all the wonders that he's collected in his Fortress of Solitude, relics from Krypton, the Phantom Zone, his pet Sun Eater, and various other mythical beasts, I guess, that he's collected, like a zoo of different creatures, and a time mirror where he can talk to Superman throughout the ages. I guess, not spending too much time on it, Lois notices he keeps going into a mysterious room, being very secretive. She assumes he's up to something sinister, but he's really organizing her birthday present, which is a super serum to give her the powers of Superman for a day. And we finish on this panel with Superman giving her own outfit, which is the setup for the third issue.
Right.
I'm surprised I haven't seen more girls cosplaying in that outfit, by the way.
Well, they're all fake geek girls, Spirit Scott. They'd rather
Of course.
I mean, they'd all rather be Power Girl and have their tits hanging out than dress more conservatively, like the suit.
No, you dress more conservatively.
Well, there's a lot of legs showing.
Your butt hanging out, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of leggings, but they're all about the tits. You got to have your tits hanging out. How else will you get the super chats, guys? Come on.
So that was one of the issues I had actually with Lois, and I'm sorry if it makes me sound chauvinist to say this, but I felt like she was too attractive, honestly.
Wait, what?
Yeah, she's got a model body, and
I actually liked that. That was great.
No, it's Lois to
All
me.
right, Gail Simone. I'm sorry she can't be a big fat bitch. We're sorry. We'll make Lois fat.
We'll shove her in her refrigerator for you.
He wants more body representation, right?
No, I mean, she felt objectified, right? She didn't feel the warm, embracing, endearing character that I think of as Lois Lane, plucky, supportive reporter.
When was Lois warm and embracing? She's always been a bit of a bitch.
I'm ashamed to admit this. I always thought that she was I think it's part of just the 60s, 50s image I have of her, but she always seemed too much of a I don't know, a biddy, I guess is the word. That's a terrible word, but I actually, it was like they kind of modernized her a bit here, and I was like, oh, she's actually an attractive woman, and that's kind of nice. I don't know. I am ashamed to say that, but I actually I thought
to
she
me
was
her
attractive.
character still felt true to Lois, like as I remembered her. But I had no issue with her being attractive. Superman should have an attractive girl, dude. Come on.
I'm not saying he can't date hot girls. I'm just saying Lois. I mean, Lois to me, yeah, she was entrepreneurial and she was driven and she had a work ethic. I don't remember her being a diva though, and I definitely don't remember her being somebody who just seemed like she was walking on the runway as she was also chasing after the story with Clark Kent and.
The thing that frustrated me about this issue, and then is the fact that this is the closest we really get to their romance, and I felt like the romance was kind of dry. I mean, she's attractive, and he's godlike, but I felt like there was a lot of just something missing from the romance. And when they finally kiss on the moon at the end of this issue, I didn't feel anything. There was just not enough of a romantic buildup. I feel like a romance writer might have been able to milk the tension better. It was just, oh yeah, they're kissing, woohoo, and it was just missing some pizzazz.
Well, frankly, to me, there was no romance. I mean,
right? Yeah, exactly.
I don't see why Superman is attracted to her, other than he fawns over her for some reason. She's extremely suspicious of him. She goes through these story beats way too conveniently that she's accepting that he's Superman, and then he's flying her off to like his hidden fortress and showing her sons that he can hit with the hammer, and she's just like, yeah, okay, I've seen all this stuff before. And then they sit for dinner. And to me, like, this is the most telling scene. She starts being a bit more direct. Like, all of this is starting to click to her finally. That, look, this guy has been pretending to be Clark Kent, which is such a bizarre role for him to choose to adopt. I don't know where the inspiration for Clark Kent came out of Superman, but that's who she's always known, and now she has to reconcile that no, it's been a total fake character that she's known her entire life, and who is this person who's now sitting in front of her. And you see, like on the right panel here, this is often used in cinema when they want to show a bit of duality. They show the scene reflected back in a mirror, to give you the sense that things are not quite real or as they seem. And I think that's exactly what Lois is sensing here with this relationship. But it's never explored very much. He gives her a costume, and then she flies off and she has superpowers, and she's giddy, and the next issue, is what it is. So.
Well, I think that is a pretty fantastic gift. I think that would make anyone giddy to have those powers for a day. But to me, like, this relationship, I mean, I felt like he loved her, but like, this didn't seem too far off from, say, the Superman movie. With that, why does Superman so in love with Lois Lane in that movie either? Like, because she has a similar kind of personality, and yeah, and this Lois Lane I think is more attractive, as you said, than Margot Kidder. But I mean, I think people have asked that question before. Why is Superman so in love with Lois Lane? It's not the first time that question's been asked, but the heart wants what it wants. He's in love with her, and I think it worked well enough for me, and it does come around again at the end, and I feel it's satisfying.
What do you think, Smug? Were you convinced?
I mean, to be honest, like I'm not really overly too fond of the second issue. It just felt like it was used to further the story along and set up for the third issue. I mean, we all know Superman and Lois have a thing. Was it presented all right in this issue? Sure, why not? There's no major complaints from me about it.
So underneath the surface, and this is the thing I actually appreciate about it, because again, I do have my philosophical differences, but as this is a love letter to the Superman mythos, one of the things, and Spirits Art can definitely chime in here, one of the things this is a love letter to is some of those, I think, 60s era comics where they had the Lois Lane, girlfriend of Superman, runs, and those would always be these stories of what if Lois Lane got married to Superman, or what if Lois Lane was murdered by Superman, and the story would be this big crazy setup. And they would if you look up on superdickory.com, you can see a whole bunch of the covers where Superman is like severing Lois's like oxygen line while she's in space. All these things that look like Superman's like murdering Lois. When you actually read the book, it's all just it's a bait and switch. And the story would usually pan out that Superman was actually saving Lois while appearing that he was actually killing her. But it was a way to kind of like, again, entice the audience to be like, oh my gosh, Superman would never do that. And then he totally didn't. So in this particular issue, the love letter to that type of story is the fact that as Superman is making the powers for a day, the chemicals kind of leak out of the room, and Lois Lane starts hallucinating, and she goes, oh no, Superman's out to kill me, and she tries to actually hurt him. And so Grant Morrison is basically kind of playing out that tried and, that very that story that people have read over and over and over again, fans of Superman, of like that the classic misunderstanding between Lois and Superman that could cause, that type of situation. So I do appreciate some of the moves that he makes, and that's kind of what he's doing in issue 2.
There's a lot of deep dive homages throughout the whole thing for sure.
Yeah.
And also later, Superman also says in a later issue when Kryptonians come to Earth that he says his father, Jor-El, was a scientist. So he says, yes, maybe I could have done more to help humanity, but I didn't feel it was my place. I just want to observe. And whereas Lois Lane very much puts herself in the middle of everything. And so maybe he's attracted to her for that reason. Whereas he's detached. He doesn't feel like it, like because his father was a scientist. He says that. So it's his place is to observe humanity and let it develop as it will. Whereas Lois is just very much doesn't give a shit and will put herself in the middle of any crazy situation. So, you're attracted to your opposite.
But I also thought that in this issue, they kind of established this aspect of Superman having this duality and being kind of a liar. And that's kind of where I felt like I was, the character was leaving me a little bit in the way I was identifying with him. He started to seem more aloof, frankly. He has these moral qualities, but he's very self-involved, very much like the gods that are introduced in the subsequent issues. He's not engaging, I think, on the level on the level of the people around him that he claims to identify with and try to connect to. So that's where I felt like this was starting to lose a bit of its humanity for me, and I didn't feel the endearing quality. If the argument is being made that this is in reference to tropes from the 60s of their relationship just being a given, that's fine. I think it contrasts a little bit with the story that he was attempting to tell. It didn't serve it very, very well, I think.
I think any woman who was given a serum that gave him Superman powers for a day would be head over heels and swooning and I think, they would just be like madly in love with that,
Well, if we've talked this topic to death, we can move on to the.
Well, at least we talked it into a nice gentle coma.
But I had a lot of thoughts on it, so I wanted to get those out there. But moving on to issue 3, so Lois now has superpowers. Twitless, maybe you'd like to take.
It's basically superpowers for a day. Again, that's another, I think, common trope send up. The big thing here is the fact that Superman and Lois kind of go on a day of adventures. It's kind of saving the day. She gets to experience superpowers really for the first time, at least in the context of this story. But the real kicker here is they run into Samson and Atlas. And I think it's very... I'm pretty sure Grant Morrison is choosing these characters very deliberately. You have a character who represents kind of Jewish mythology in a sense, and then Greek mythology, and the two of them basically compete with Superman, who's basically modern, god, modern mythology, and the three of them compete over over Lois, and to see like who's going to spend more time with her essentially, and of course Superman being Superman, he kind of wins out. But while they're doing that, I should mention this. While they're doing that, he completes one of his major labors, the sort of theme of him completing the labors of Hercules, and he answers a riddle from the Ultra Sphinx. So he does the intellectual journey here, because the Superman that Grant Morrison is portraying to us is not just a man of fists or a man of strength. He is a man of the mind. He's a Superman in every sense of the word. And so he has to answer an unanswerable riddle, which he does so.
Right.
Yeah, the stakes are that he has Lois between life and death here, and the only way he can retrieve Lois is to answer this unanswerable question.
And he answers it.
And then he breaks Samson's and Atlas's arms, which I thought was a little out of character, but
They had it.
Well, he knows they're gods. They'll heal.
I know, but it doesn't feel very Superman-like to me.
Yeah, and she invites the flirtation here as well. Like that just also.
And that is like, well, that's also believable. You know that, and I actually kind of like that. I think to see Superman in that uncomfortable situation, he calls her out on it too. Like that all felt very true. You know, they could be mortals, and I could see like, you know, chicks will do that kind of stuff in real life. You know.
There.
I don't know. I just didn't see anything that Superman was pining for in this relationship other than she exists. Like, where exactly are they connecting? That I just don't get it.
Can we mention that there are a couple of panels where Frank quietly just makes Superman look like the creepiest guy ever, and I think it's in the page or two following this one, and Superman he has this. Oftentimes, Frank quietly will picture Superman looking down at the camera, and there's one where he's just like dripping with like white liquid. He's just got this like grin on his face, and it's just like I don't know, just a couple of them. It's just like it makes me uncomfortable.
This issue was also a throwback to, I think I sent you a cover well read of like 1950s, 60s sci-fi with like those kind of issues you were talking about, Twitless, like where Atlas and Samson or Atlas and Hercules are going off with Superman's girls, Lois and Lana, you know. So I mean, Grant Morrison, like, he knows the history of this character extensively, probably more than most people, you know, and he's really trying to pay homage and tribute and encapsulate Superman throughout the decades in this single story. And I think he accomplishes that really well with the choices of characters, the 12 labors, the challenges he goes through, and what he struggles with in the story.
I agree. He knows the history, and I think he knows it extremely well. I don't think he fully understands what he knows. That is my issue with Grant Morrison.
Right. Does he know the history, or is he cherry picking the history?
No, when you read Super Gods, he knows his history. He knows it. He really does. But it's just he'll read the history, and then, in my opinion, he'll completely like misread it. In some places, like the example that I remember from Super Gods, he wrote this entire book on like the history of superheroes, and you know, in particular, Superman being a big standout there. And he ends up misreading Superman as a super socialist, and I'm just like, the fuck? Like, I mean, you can read Superman as a lot of things, but like classic Superman being a socialist because he fought crony capitalists and industrialism, and it's like, dude, it just, again, it really screamed of you're Scottish looking, you're on the outside looking in at America, and it's like, no one sees Superman as a socialist. Not really. Like, I'm sure someone can make an argument about it, but like by and large, most people see Superman as a good old boy from like Kansas or something, like Midwestern values, and he's a hard-working man who wants to work for a corporation, a journalism corporation of all things. So like the idea that he's just like super socialist, man, it's just like there's just certain things that Grant Morrison will say, and it's just like, what? You know you exhaustively know your history, but then you'll like take that grand sum total and then say something just really off the wall about it. And that's kind of my issues with his writing.
I mean, that might have been a thought he had at that time, but there's none of that in this book. There's nothing. It just goes
That's
into pure
fair.
mythic and science fiction. That might have been a thought he threw out, you know, and you can interpret things in different ways, but clearly it wasn't something that was that important when we held on to, because that's not at all in this book at all. So just to be clear to everyone.
Right. So
this iconic image right here of Superman Lois on the moon.
Yeah. Yeah, the art is it's definitely stunning. Like, I like the costume choice as well. I think it's definitely very appropriate for the character. He didn't take too many liberties, but it's stylized enough where it feels fresh and interesting. So, and for Lois too.
I need to find that image where
that'd be a great
creepy
costume for a girl to cosplay in. That looks creepy to you, Twitless? That looks very romantic. What are you talking about?
No. That doesn't look creepy. That looks great. hold on. I've got an image I want to share. That's the one that made me think that it was creepy.
Save that for later. What I like about Frank Quitely's art, though, with see Superman's physique right here, but like when he's Clark Kent, like he's still a big guy. You can't hide, your muscles, but the physicality. I don't know if you have pages of Clark Kent for later, but you see when he's Superman, he's poised, he stands upright. When he's Clark Kent, he's kind of hunched over, and just like his physicality changes, that you would never think he's Superman. He's just this nerdy kind of awkward guy, who's knocking stuff over. And you get to hear about like artists, like you don't hear fans talk about this much, but sometimes you hear pro artists talk about it, and they'll say like they're kind of acting, and it is when they draw a character, they're giving a performance with how they draw the character or their posture and whatnot.
Am I the only one who thought this was creepy? This particular panel?
I don't think
He's coming out of the ocean. It's water.
Yeah, I don't think it's creepy at all, Twitless.
All right, I guess I have a dirty mind.
I think your avatar's freaking creepier than this panel of Superman, Twitless.
It's probably fair. It's probably fair.
Yeah, I think you're creepy for thinking. You're creepier for thinking that's creepy. They're clearly coming out of water.
I spent too much time on Super Dickery.
No, I actually like this image. I'm not
Super Dick. What now?
Super Dickery. Again, it's a website that aggregates a whole bunch of. It's called. The tagline is Superman is a dick, and it basically has all of those covers of like Superman just being awful to people, and it just catalogs again that 60s sort of vibe. But they did a lot of them, and so overall, it makes Superman look like a terrible jerk because like every issue, it was like, what if Superman was Jimmy Olsen's dad, and the image would show Superman being like, Jimmy Olsen, I'm chaining you to a wall. Jimmy Olsen's like, please don't do this. So, yeah, I guess that colored my view of Superman a bit.
Maybe.
Wooster's with me. Okay,
that's like a benevolent expression, though. Look.
Wooster's with me. It's a creepy face. Yeah, there we go. All right, there are two dirty minds in this world.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess art is subjective. Jim Tooner also says the art is just awful, but I don't know. I liked it.
I don't think so at all. I think the art works for the story being told, and I think, like I said, how he draws Clark Kent and Superman and the distinction, which I don't think really any artist has really done. Like not the way Frank Quitely did in this book, where you believe like he could fool people. It's like, oh, he just doesn't have his glasses on. But no, when he's Clark Kent, his physique is different, his posture is different, the way he carries himself. When you hear like an artist like is giving a performance when they're acting, like that makes sense when you see like Frank Quitely's art in this book, when you see the distinction between Superman and Clark Kent.
So I think we're going to get into this in more depth later. I think for me the art is hit and miss. There are some pages and panels I go, wow, that's great. Something about the way Frank Quitely draws faces is really off-putting sometimes, and then like because it's always good as an artist to play to your strengths. And Quitely's faces are definitely one of his weaknesses. And so there are a couple of pages, especially in that first issue with the girl, the green-headed girl or whatever, and it's just like her head is just like the page, and it's like, oh, come on. So like I say, I think it's hit or miss for me. The hits are really, really strong. The misses are kind of sometimes I think they range from either awkward to, in my opinion, creepy. But again, I'm a dirty mind. So.
Okay. Moving on to issue 4. I guess I can quickly give the synopsis for this one. So Jimmy Olsen is going to be interviewing Quintum. He's given free reign of his company during that day, and for some reason ends up falling into this vat where they're exploring something called the Underverse, which to me is more Grant Morrison science fantasy. I mean, he talks about things like negative waves, and this is space that exists under the universe. So out of that comes an element called black kryptonite, which turns Superman evil. He starts acting like Bizarro in a lot of ways. And then he ends up having to fight a changed Jimmy Olsen, who takes some DNA modifying injection that makes him have Doomsday's powers. The two of them fight, and eventually he beats Superman. and then he slowly loses his own powers. And then he asks, as his last decree as the CEO of this company, that the face of the moon be changed to some romantic sentiment for his girlfriend. And that's the issue in a nutshell. So to me, like this is this is where I had a problem with this series as well. It's very tightly contained. It's only 12 issues, and I get that there's a lot of homage happening here, but there's a lot of throwaway moments as well. And this whole thing with Jimmy Olsen, for some reason he has a watch that can communicate directly with Superman, which I don't know. I'm not familiar with that from any lore of Superman that I've ever seen.
I feel like I've seen that before. Isn't that something Twitless that Jimmy had at some point in something?
The watch?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's
or something that they could. Yeah.
No, he definitely had a watch. Yeah, it's made its appearance in some of the modern cartoons and movies as well. The other thing is that this is another reference, again, send off to the classic kind of like Silver Age Superman, because the amount of times that Jimmy Olsen transforms into blank. So you can actually look up the amount of times that Jimmy Olsen, there's actually a drinking game on, again, superdickory.com, if that website's still alive. And it was, the drinking game was every time that Jimmy Olsen transforms into a turtle, take a shot. Because the amount of times, for some reason, that Jimmy Olsen would transform into a giant turtle. So again, there's a wealth of comics that have just kind of been memory hold, because I think a lot of them may have been either outside of continuity or they were outside of the main series. They're kind of like side series and stuff. So there was we lost.
Look, Spirit Scar hated this so much he decided to leave. Bye, Spirit Scar.
I'm sure he'll be back.
But this is again another reference to the transformation sequence of basically of Jimmy Olsen, and also there's another. They actually have him cross-dressing, I think, in this issue, which was another nod to the amount of times that Jimmy Olsen, because I think he did a lot of cross-dressing back in the day too. He dressed up as a woman and stuff back in the day. They did a lot of gimmicky things and stuff that now people would read a lot more, I think, into.
I read that was a throwback, an old like Jimmy Olsen story where he was in drag because he was like undercover or something. So that was like some old 50s issues. I think he just wanted to give Jimmy Olsen his moment. I think this is like a tribute to the whole Superman mythos and those important characters in that. And Jimmy Olsen is one of those characters. And I think he just wanted to have him show that friendship that Jimmy Olsen has with Superman and have him have that moment of Jimmy Olsen rescued his friend by beating him up when he needed to by doing this crazy thing, so.
Yeah. The only thing I really found interesting about this issue was the lettering, how we see Superman's text go from white to grey, watching it gradually get darker as he transforms into this anti-Superman. But otherwise, I wasn't really a big fan of this issue. I guess the Doomsday reference is where Grant Morrison starts to bring in some more modern elements of Superman to the story, because I think Doomsday is a pretty recent and modern character and story, right? It's the 90s, I think.
Yep. That's
right.
It's
the 90s, and it's a significance. So that's cool that he put that homage in there. It was a major thing in Superman's lore. But again, what people will credit to Frank Quitely's art, though, is just the physicality of it feels like he is giving a performance to Superman just every time you see him standing, and the way he just interacts with people and his body language. I think it does. I think Frank Quitely is very skilled at that and deft at that and communicating that.
Right. So, I guess
he's skilled at what I call the afterglow face. Sorry.
Just a bit of a fun issue. All right,
you creeper.
I know.
It wasn't that bad, Twitless. Give poor Frank a break here. It was just a bit of a romp issue. Not a lot of meaning or significance behind it, other than the idea of black kryptonite is interesting, and that it can turn him evil. But the solution, again, which seems to be just the solution for everything that's radioactive for Superman, is just stick it in some lead, and then he'll be fine. Which they do that to the black kryptonite, and everything's okay. So, I guess lead is the answer for all forms of
Well,
radiation that affect Superman.
it's kind of like a day in the life of Superman. Is just whatever crazy thing might happen, like in like the last issue when the lizard people come out from the center of the earth. It's just like whatever just crazy shit might happen because that's Superman's daily existence is when whatever insanity may come and he has to deal with.
Well, so now this is the issue that I was particularly fond of, and I don't know who would like to give the synopsis. I think Spirit Scar, you mentioned that this was an interesting issue for you as well. Would you like to give us a synopsis for this one?
Sure. So Lex Luthor, who had been previously working with the military but doing villainous things, because they're trying to keep a leash on him, so they finally put him on trial for crimes against humanity and sentenced him to death. So they send him to this super prison for like high-powered super criminals, and Clark Kent goes to interview him because he's on death row. So he gets this amazing interview, and Luthor actually seems to kind of get along with Kent. It's funny, and like because I guess he sees him as no threat or competition to himself. Because we should talk about Morrison's depiction of Lex Luthor, and we really see here in this issue, but he is like a throwback to the Met scientist because he's been successful as a businessman as well. Like you get the sense like he's done those things, but you get like Luthor's ego, and he is brilliant, but like his sense of self is like so fragile. Like he has to be the smartest guy in the room, the most powerful guy in the room. There's a part in this issue where he's showing off his muscles to Clark Kent and has Clark Kent touch them and say like, that's real muscles. I just don't have them just because of the sun, like comparing himself to Superman. And there's this, they go through the...
Probably that muscle moment is probably one of the best moments of Lex Luthor in the book and one of the best moments in the entire series. It's a very poignant moment.
Yeah, it's very telling. And there's a great scene in this story when Lex Luthor's walking with Kent around and they're like transporting a prisoner who's like yelling and talking shit to Luthor. And then, you see him. It's Parasite, this monster who feeds off the energy of whatever's around. And nobody knows that Clark Kent is Superman. So all of a sudden this Parasite monster is getting amped up and more powerful, and nobody knows why, but it's because Superman's in the room. And so now this threat is here, and Superman has to deal with that without letting anyone know. And there's like classic like comedic moments that you would see in old school Superman where like he handles something like kind of discreetly and was able to quell this threat, where he like steps in, creates a big crack to stop the guy, or he like blows and like freezes these criminals who are about to kill Lex, So there's like it feels very true to Superman lore. It's entertaining. And this whole thing is like a wild story through a prison, and Lex invented this machine that reads all these classics of literature, but he turns one so like it reads at such a high frequency, it reads Moby Dick, that it can drill through the earth. And so he actually built a tunnel in the prison that takes him underneath where he has his niece waiting in a boat, in a very mythological kind of like a boat that takes him, Clark Kent, through the river back out to freedom, to take him out. It all felt very, very mythological.
Now that we've mentioned the niece, can anyone, because that's one of the few things that I completely have no idea what Morrison is doing. This niece character comes out of nowhere. She shows up in the story twice. She's completely like, I don't know why she's in the story at all. I don't get her role. I don't understand even what they're channeling with her. It's just like, her name's like Nash Talia. It's like a bad pun. And like, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so evil. I want to take over the world someday. And it's just like, what? Who is this character? Why are you in this story? And I'm just like, does anyone know who, why?
Is she a character that's existed before? Like maybe she's some obscure character from the 50s or 60s that was referenced once and then never heard of again?
No, I looked it up. This is her first and only appearance as far as I'm aware.
Grant Morrison might be making a comment on maybe the fourth Superman movie. I know Lex Luthor has a nephew in that, played by the guy from 2.5 Men. Maybe it's like a slight jab at that.
That could make sense.
That's what I thought. I feel like Lex Luthor's had family in different lore. Okay. And the character doesn't get in the way. I mean, she serves her role. It's like she doesn't get too obtrusive. I think she's there when it works.
Yeah, it's just I feel like honestly the story would have been better if she were just not in it.
I think the character's fine. It's fun. I think she takes Clark out. She doesn't ruin the story for me or anything. I think she's fine.
She didn't bother me. I have to say, like, this 5th issue is my favorite issue. I love the comedic moments, like Spirit Sky was talking about, how you have all these problems in the prison. For example, in this panel here, one of the inmates picks up a gun from a guard and is about to put a slug in the back of Lex Luthor's head, and Clark obviously saves him, but does it so, by acting clumsy. And on the previous page, when there's the soldering gun with the electrical wire, Superman knows that, I guess, the wire's afraid and it's going to cause an accidental fire. See the spark here. So he basically pretends to trip on the wire to, basically save Lex's life. Otherwise he would have been electrocuted. And then he comments that his rubber soles saved saved Clark, but it was actually, his superhuman abilities. So it's a fun issue. This one, it's the most enjoyable issue of the entire series, in my opinion.
Well, and
Go ahead.
sorry, you go ahead, Twitless.
I was just going to ping off what Smug said. Yeah, I think I concur. I think this is probably one of my favorite moments in the series, if not my favorite. I think the dynamic between Clark and Lex was pretty neat. And how Lex describes his hatred of Superman was very well put. One of my issues with Grant Morrison in this story is that, in my opinion, some of the characters just feel off. I felt like with Lex, he felt pretty... Out of all the characters, I think that Lex felt the most like, oh, you captured him. Really captured him quite well. The only criticism I have is the fact that I feel like, because of the comedy, I feel like Lex gets a bit undermined in this issue a bit, because a lot of things happen. It's just Superman just saving Lex all the time, while Lex just basically blunders about and then takes credit for everything. And that's a bit of a metaphor for
that's part of Lex's character.
Sure, I think
it speaks volumes of his character. Yeah.
But since this is his big moment to shine, or one of his moments to shine, I don't know, it just kind of just hit me a little differently. But that being said, Lex does get at the end to show that he's kind of a step ahead of at least the authorities with the whole digging a secret tunnel thing. So they at least ended on him having his moment, which I appreciated.
Well, and Lex has a moment to shine at the end of the series as well,
Well, and not to get too pretentious, I actually liked the motivations that were established here for Lex, and it to me it established a lot this theme that I keep seeing reoccur in this story, of how truthful is the character of Superman, and here Lex is the ultimate truth. He says, "This is my final revenge to be right. My survival of the strongest doctrine. Command absolute respect in here." He wants to show that his ability to overcome his deficiencies as a man, to confront who he is in the fullness of everything about him, his weaknesses, his deficiencies, his strengths, and embrace all those things, is the true superior attribute to what Superman has, which is just something that was bestowed upon him. As an occurrence of nature. And that's where I feel like Lex is really saying that I've fully embraced reality, whereas Superman lives in a delusion. And that's what makes Superman fundamentally a falsehood, a lie. And he has this other great panel here where he talks about that. He says here in his abstracts, right here, I will show you. Here, to truth, justice, and all the other things you can't weigh or carry, to every abstract he represents. Superman is to Lex simply an idea, and very pliant, something that's not very concrete and substantive. So to Lex, Superman is a delusion, essentially, one that is revered and is presented as being implicitly superior, but ultimately a complete falsehood. And so Lex is the ultimate truth here, and that's what motivates him. He has greed also in his desire to represent truth. He wants to possess all of these characteristics that he's cognizant of in abundance. He wants to dominate them and be supreme in every way that's available to him. So yes, he's a narcissist. He's self-obsessed, but he's thoroughly honest, and I think that really comes through for Lex Luthor here. That's what I read into it, anyway. So
And he's also where, like, if not for Superman, Lex Luthor could be like the greatest man on Earth as far as what he's achieved and mind, body, and all that he's accomplished. But it's always gonna pale in comparison as long as Superman is on Earth, you know. And you see, well, Superman's not even really a human yet.
Don't you mean that's what you well read into that story? Oh!
Oh.
all right.
Just when you thought this review couldn't get any worse, we have Twitless making jokes.
Someone's got to.
Death of Comics. Thank you, Tony.
I would say this is one of my favorite images of Superman of all time. This cover, I love everything about this cover. Of him mourning his father, Jonathan Kent, and his faithful dog Crypto there, just standing there with him. And it's a serious image because you see it's about death, he's mourning his loss, but then just the little bit of absurdity of his super dog with a cape right by his side, you know, because this is a comic book. They're fantastic characters. This is science fantasy, so I love the mixture of the heavy emotion with the absurd in that image.
Yeah, after the previous issue, I'd say this one probably comes in maybe a close second. I can't remember any other issues standing out. And it's just because of the relationship between Superman and Crypto. I'm not sure how common Crypto is in the comics. I mean, he was obviously like, was it a Golden Age character, a Silver Age character? But I think he disappeared from the comics for a long time, so you don't really see him around much anymore, right?
Yeah, he has like spotty appearances. He shows up here and there, pretty much all throughout Superman's run, but you can definitely tell like which creators. Here's the thing about Superman. Superman is a character, and this is again another thing that Grant Morrison is doing very differently, because Grant Morrison, and I think he does this with a lot of characters when he writes them. He tries to embrace the entire history of that character, whereas most American writers understand, or at least approach superhero writing with the fact that you can't embrace an entire superhero's character, because if you from Golden Age to Modern Age, you know, Batman's got Batmite, which is this imp who can just like, he's basically a little genie. Like that's in Batman's history. And it's like, well, if you want to do like a Paul Dini, you know, detective story, you can't just have like genies in it. So a lot of superhero writing is not just the stuff that you use, it's the stuff that you ignore. But Grant Morrison loves everything. And so he likes to write stories where he just embraces the entire thing carte blanche. And so I think that's what leads to the stories feeling very differently. So a lot of people will ignore aspects of, for example, Superman just doesn't have Crypto. Superman has an entire super menagerie. There's a super monkey. I don't know the names of these guys, but there's a super horse. There's a cat. He's got like an entire, and they all have capes. Like that's part of Superman's lore. And so it's like, well, if you want to do like a somewhat grounded Superman story, you're probably going to have to ignore the super pet shop. But like I said, Grant usually he embraces a lot of the stuff.
And I heard Morrison talk about this from his perspective, like this makes Superman more relatable because, like, well, he has a dog, like normal people just have a dog, right? And there he is, like, just taking his dog for a walk. Except when Superman takes his dog for a walk, he flies around the cosmos and then rests with his dog on the moon because everything is epic, everything's larger than life, everything is mythological. But against Morrison's perspective, saying like, oh, this makes him relatable. Like he has a dog, like I have a dog, you know. So it's a matter of his perception and meaning.
Well, Grant Morrison had a cat which he healed with his shaman powers. If you,
that's why I feel like this story actually makes Superman more relatable than any other comic out there. I think not only that his impending mortality is about to catch up with him, but yeah, like Spirit Scar was saying, we see the relationship between him and Crypto. And although it's like in Superman style, they both fly into outer space. You know, he throws a tree trunk out there, and Crypto goes to fetch it. Everyone can understand and relate with what Superman's doing. He's spending some time with his friend, his best friend, if you will.
To me, it wasn't just the relationship with the dog, though, that made him relatable here. His parents are the only ones that accept him as a man and as Superman up to this point. For everybody else, his identity is pretty much secret, and he has to wear this weird facade of Clark Kent. So here, this is the first time you actually understand why he transcends both, and why he's not just this hidden supreme being behind this bungling buffoon. That there is some crossover there, and he's exposing a bit of himself as he is still this human god. So that I liked quite a bit. That you could see where he was actually grounded.
Spirit Scar, you do iconography, right? What's the symbol the golden Superman's got? Is that a particular? Because like Grant Morrison loves his symbols. That's got to be something. The two like.
They almost look like water drops or something. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a specific thing or not.
That has to be. Do we have any symbologists in chat?
I know, maybe
Probably
do like
not.
an image search for that.
This is where like the issue does like fall for me. I would have been perfectly happy just to watch like an entire issue of Superman playing with his dog. Once it starts to get into this sort of time traveling plot, so he could see his father again, that's where it kind of it loses it a little bit for me. I mean, I understand it's touching that he's going back and saying things to his uncle, or no, not his uncle, his adoptive father, that he probably wants to say, but I just really don't.
Mr. Donk says it's a yin yang symbol, you idiots.
Yeah, I think it's missing pieces for it to be a yin yang. I don't think yin yang would fit what Morrison's doing. It could be. I feel like it could be another Buddhist or something symbol. I just don't think it's a yin yang. Could be. I don't know.
Well, I think this whole issue though is really about his father. It's not so much about crypto, and it's just Morrison said that at the time that he was writing this, his own father died in real life, so those themes were prevalent, and it also comes up again in a future issue when the Kryptonian astronauts. But
so
the love he has for his father and losing him is mourning his loss.
So this image actually encapsulates a lot of what, in my opinion, what Grant Morrison is doing with the book, and this is where I start to philosophically defer. This is what Grant Morrison sees Superman as, because actually as the story kind of reveals, because there's a lot of time travel, timey-wimey Doctor Who stuff going on here, which is also something that stuck in craw a bit. But this is actually, it's heavily implied this is actually Superman after the story of All-Star Superman, like in the future. After the sun stuff, like he's become the sun god, the golden representation of all that is like good and everything. And it's like this from a symbolic perspective, again, I see what Grant Morrison is doing. I can even like respect the craft behind it. This isn't Superman to me. This is not what when I sit down and I want to read a Superman story, this is not what I want to read. And this is like I said,
you can tell there's Superman in a. But you can do this in a self-contained story, though. That exists in its own world, so that's where you can do this,
And that's kind of I can respect that. It's just we'll get to that later. But yeah, this is definitely what Grant Morrison sees as a Superman. What Superman kind of represents to him. He's perfection. He's utter perfection.
Well, that's like an ancient Egyptian thing too. Like the Egyptians would try to mummify themselves so they wouldn't come back in physical form. Eventually, the goal was to incarnate as stars, and we saw the Ultra Sphinx in an earlier issue. So, I think as we get through more of the series, I think we touch on more of those themes. But
the only thing I have to say about this issue, other than loving crypto and not really caring for the rest of the story, is it does show Grant Morrison's penchant for, I guess, putting Easter eggs in, like this Golden Superman's an Easter egg for what happens later in the story. The Supermen who come through time to help him were previously people he was talking about within issue 2 in the Mirror. So it's like these little Easter eggs here and there, both forward and back, throughout the entire series, which I guess shows that he put a lot of thought into this story.
And that would definitely fit, I think, with what Grant Morrison sees time as. Like it would, again, if you see something cyclical in the story, or the story kind of echoes back and forth, that's a very Grant Morrison thing to do with time in a story.
And to this, like, Superman isn't static. I mean, different writers have contributed to his mythos. He's grown and changed over the decades, so you can't say like he's this one thing and don't deviate from that because he's only this. Like, no, he's.
I would debate that point slightly, but I think that's a separate. I would say yes and no to that. I would concede in a sense, yeah, he's been added to, but there's certain ways in which he is very static. So
there's an essence of Superman.
Yeah, he's a weird mix of that.
Maybe you and Will Red disagree, but I think the book captures the essence of Superman. I think.
Okay, like I said, I think it captures the essence of a Superman. The Superman. I don't. There's something off.
Okay. So I can mention it maybe because it's in this issue, but I feel like what this book loses about Superman is the idea that he's the common man. He's supposed to be just a manifestation of what an ordinary person is capable of, like, you know, a father or a neighbor. You know, they can go off and they can save people and they can do super heroic things. And I lost the common man, you know, sense in this representation. There was so much emphasis on what I thought was just a detached figure, a god, that I didn't see enough of. I saw the god man. I didn't see the man god. I saw him trying his very best to explore his social needs, to identify and relate to those around him, but he was still very much godlike throughout most of this story. Whereas to me, the essence of Superman is that he's constrained in this social definition of what it is to be a man, but when called upon to do so, he can then do superhuman feats, just as any common person would be able to do should the need arise. Well,
I think you see that everyman quality in his human relationships, though, and who he cares about his friends and his family. I think that's where you see like the everyman. But I mean, he is super powered, you know. So
I'm also curious, this whole God, Superman deity persona, that the image that we're looking at right now, does it have any relation to the 12 Labors storyline that was going through all of the issues as well? Was it intended to lead to this?
I think that's, again, eventually where he's going to end up. But this is a moment where we get to see the future here.
Right.
like I said, this is a thing in ancient Egyptian mythology of the goal to incarnate as a star. So these are archetypal ancient myths and ideas that he's putting in here.
Chronologically, this would be post climax when he becomes the sun god essentially after fixing the sun.
But it was also foretold that that would happen to him
So it's
after
a
those.
prophecy.
Yeah, after those 12 labors.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I guess him going through the sequence of those 12 labors was his inevitable rise to this eventual climax. All right, so moving on. The next issue is the Bizarro World issue, I believe. So, here we have... Oh, and Smug Pug has the actual comic cover up. So thank you for that. So who was in love with this storyline? Who would like to give this synopsis?
Not me.
I enjoy Bizarro. I enjoy the character, and I guess you guys weren't into this particular episode, but I'm glad Bizarro's in this, and I think he is the shadow, like in Carl Jung kind of terms, of Superman, of just like Superman is a being of reason and enlightenment, and Bizarro is just all the ugliness. Like Superman is an ideal of humanity, and Bizarro embraces the ugliness of humanity and all like a satanic inversion, if you will. Maybe not satanic, but turning things upside down, which is all about the Bizarro's about. So I think this character and the Bizarro world has its place in this story, and I think it is that it's in the midpoint. It's like him, the underverse, and in classic mythology, going into the underworld and being able to come back, from that darkness. That's how I interpret this.
So Bizarro is introduced here as a parasite, essentially, that starts to infect everyone. And I believe eventually Superman as well. But it's done by the introduction of the Bizarro planet being in orbit around the Earth. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, it starts off because there's some incident on the moon where Quintus is experimenting with underspace. Again, I'm not really a big fan of this issue. The only thing I really like is Superman. Another Easter egg from the earlier issues was Superman showing Lois his Sun Eater in the Fortress of Solitude. He's been nursing it as a baby, and the issue starts off with Superman out in space, and we see it appears to be fighting this creature, and the tentacles are wrapping around him. But then we see him flying away, waving, and it's almost like this tentacle here is coming up, waving back at him. And you quickly realize that he's not fighting this creature, that this is the Sun Eater, and he's releasing it into the wild, and he's just playing with it as a goodbye. And I love the art in this, because as Superman's looking back with a grin on his face, you can see the tentacle is raised again, almost like a goodbye. And if you really zoom in on this panel here, with the Sun Eater, what we assume is its head kind of hovering down, almost looks like it's sad to, it's sad to see Superman go.
Can we just take a moment, though, to realize that Superman just let loose a Sun Eater into the cosmos and said, "Bye, it's nice to see you around. Go eat some suns."
It exists in the cosmos. What, is he going to kill it? I mean, something
Well,
has purpose to lie.
he had it in containment earlier. There's a couple moments where you just, a thing happens and I go, wait a second, would Superman be okay with this? At the very beginning, there was a moment where Quentin is like genetically engineering, like on a grand scale, just making like genetic engineering, like human experimentation. And Superman says, "Good idea." And I went, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, that's what feels off for me too. This Quentin guy is like cloning these army of Bizarros and playing around with like Unspace and the Underverse, which helps release this Bizarro plague into the real world. It seems like this Quintus guy is like, he is benevolent, but he's playing with things he shouldn't be. And if anything, Superman just goes along with it. And it's just like, come on, dude, you've worked with mad scientists all your freaking life.
I would
Superman.
feel like he would at least bring up some questions, and not just give it like a rubber stamp.
Yeah. Like if Lex Luthor was pulling this shit, Superman would definitely have something to say about it. But for some reason, this Quintus guy gets a pass. It's
And then he lets out a Sun Eater to go eat some suns.
See,
the Sun Eater's
have a problem
fine.
with him letting loose the Sun Eater. Yeah.
Oh,
The Sun Eater's
sure,
an
yeah,
animal. It
because that
exists.
didn't
It's
cause
in
any
the
problems for
cosmos. It has
Phoenix.
life.
Yeah, they're like, I'm guessing these Sun Eaters are like really rare, and like, it's like, it might be like the last of its kind or something, or one of the last of its kind.
It was, I think.
Yeah,
But still,
You know how many
Superman,
stars
the
are there in
Plague
the universe? Come on.
Well, I guess
And
there's going to be a few. There's going to be a few less.
Oh, and this
Well, I mean, not
Sun Eater
really.
comes into play later.
Oh, that's a good point.
But yeah, like the previous issue where I was really enjoying watching Superman play with Krypto, and then we get this time travel story, and I was kind of like, now we get to see him play with the Sun Eater, when we get this Bizarro story, and it's just like, like there's little like Twitless was saying, the sum of its parts being better than I think
by the end it does add up, because the overarching theme is there, and why he feels the pressure to get off this planet and get off there. But to me, like, it is uncomfortable. I can see maybe why you would, like, it does make you feel a sense of dread, like when you're in this place, like it's not a pleasant place to be, which is how Bizarro would be. And this character, Zabaro, who is like a anomaly in the Bizarro world, he's like an actual functional proper clone. So he's like living in this nightmare experience as he's among all these Bizarros who are all, upside down, while he's reasonable.
This character to me is the sole purpose for this 2-issue story arc. It is Superman essentially in an alien world, very much like Earth, trying to find a way to relate and retain whatever inside of him is still familiar. So, but it's not really explored until the next issue. So most of this first issue was him fighting this planet. Maybe it's another throwback storyline from the 50s and 60s, and it's just more homage.
Well, I had someone tell me in a voice call that apparently Bizarro's gone through different origin stories. Originally, he did come from a cubed planet, much like we can see in the cube sun here. But then his origin story changed to something else, that he was a clone of Superman. So Bizarro's origin story constantly changes. So I guess this is just another homage back to the original true story, origin story of Bizarro, that he comes from this cubed universe.
I mean, this place is supposed to be unpleasant for Superman. This like nightmarish thing for him that he does affect him, and he gets very lethargic, and he's trying to like desperate to get out of here. And I think it does come across to the reader as well, So, I mean, you guys just enjoy. I enjoy the character Bizarro. I always have. So. But I guess what it's supposed to be, what you're supposed to be feeling, like, is this dread, and like I want to get out.
I think
of
what you meant to say,
so
Spirit Car, is that you hate Bizarro.
Right.
Me, I'm hate Bizarro. Yeah,
Right, exactly. There you go.
Bizarro, worst villain. Yeah.
You're right. Exactly. And actually, okay, that brings up one of the technical problems I had with this was a two-parter. Um,
Yeah.
Morrison commits to the bit. We are on a Bizarro planet, and then Superman and all the Bizarro people speak in Bizarro for like 2 whole issues, and my brain hurt.
Yeah.
All of the dialogue
Well, and to me,
is in
especially
Bizarro speak,
at
which
the
is
end.
fitting, but it hurts your brain. I wish he'd cut it somehow.
Well, like, and at the end, like the solution of how to finally get the rocket built, which apparently Z Bizarro couldn't figure out this entire time, but Superman comes along and it dawns on him. He just starts speaking in Bizarro language, and then he manages to get all the Bizarro people to help him build this rocket. Yeah, lots of reliance on story tropes, which I think we mentioned earlier, but didn't delve into too hard. But
Well, if Superman can answer the unanswerable question, and he can get some Bizarros to help him out, lift some.
So,
Right.
well read.
stuff,
I think well read. You would say that this am your favorite story then.
yes, this am my favorite story. Indeed.
Don't quit your day job to it, listener.
Drat.
I do like though that there's a representation of Superman's father here, who's this Z Bizarro's father. Z Bizarro is desperately alone here. He writes poetry. And he expresses that how isolated he feels, and it's because there's no aspect of him that's able to identify and relate to the people around him. So because he was such a clear reflection of Superman himself, it also demonstrates that that's essentially what drives Superman within him as well. As a Kryptonian, he's a social creature. And even though he's surrounded by people that could fundamentally be unrelatable to him, he struggles to relate to them on any level that he possibly can. Only really succeeding with his parents, I would argue. But that's essentially what drives the humanity in Superman, other than his implicit nature of being this perfect being, given he has the energy of the sun. So
I think this does go back to like the Jungian terms of Superman dealing with his shadow and just this ugliness that they may be within him, or the inversion of him that's as benevolent and as loving as Superman is. I mean, he is repelled by all this, and is desperate to get out of there.
Yeah, I thought actually with this panel here, where Zabaro brings up there only seems to be room for one on your rocket ship, I thought we were getting set up for a fight between Zabaro and Superman to see who would get to escape this nightmare world, but yeah, it doesn't go that way at all, and Zabaro actually helps Superman into the rocket and waves goodbye.
And I wonder how much does Superman see humanity that way, because Superman is so much above human beings. So, but he has a very different attitude. Like Zabaro is above these other Bizarro creatures, but he's just him. He's in hell,
But if he's so perfect, like, why couldn't he just build a rocket with like 2 seats on it? Is that a reference to the fact that Jor-El also didn't build a rocket with 3 seats on it? Is that the lore we're pulling from?
Yeah,
could be.
You see,
It's been requested that I monotone, by the way.
You see where I'm coming from, right? Like, there's themes that he's trying to explore here, but then he's like trapped by these story tropes that, I don't know, seem to like drown him. Like here, okay, so Z Bizarro is desperate to get off this planet, and he's saying, why do I feel as if you haven't been listening to me at all? Don't you realize I take any chance to get away from here? I dare any peril. He's desperate for any other communication with another rational being. So it drives him to his core.
And he does provide moments of non-Bizarro speak to Atlas.
Yes.
Hey, what?
To save our sanity.
Oh, yes, thank goodness. Like, literally, my brain hurt.
Well, now this is a very interesting issue to me. Now, we've spent a lot of time trying to explore Superman's, what I consider to be his human nature, or his human inclinations, let's put it that way. And now we explore his Kryptonian ones, in the form of two space travelers from Krypton that come to Earth while Superman is away and benefit from the sun, as Superman did. But instead of embracing their better selves the way Superman did, they decide to serve Earth, but only with the purpose of trying to remake it in Krypton's image. And they deride Superman when he arrives. They say, "How dare you fail in elevating this world and making it better than what it is? You're a son of Krypton, and you should know everything that's possible with reestablishing Krypton on this new world." And it has an interesting culmination. They eventually become sick, and Superman shows his better self, and he draws from his upbringing by his parents to demonstrate to these two Kryptonians that he was taught to respect his elders and to show kindness and love. And rather than punish them for their superior nature and their indifferent behavior, he chooses to save them. And
also, they break the moon.
And they break the moon.
Yeah, and they fuck his shit up. They destroy the statues of his parents in the Fortress of Solitude, and they wreck stuff all over the planet Earth. They stop a volcano just because they want to. This is one of my favorite issues in the series, actually, because I think that what you said, that page, Twitless, where he's taking care of them, and I think it does speak volumes of, like, the Superman just doesn't see himself above humanity. Like, it is his upbringing that his parents, his human parents, taught him those values of, respecting your elders, of forgiveness, of compassion. That these are values he learned from humanity. So it's not like he's just above humanity looking down on them constantly. He does appreciate human beings. And
also, they then try to fix the moon by using the Golden Gate Bridge and a whole bunch of other national monuments to staple it up like stitches.
They had the Sydney Harbour Bridge as well.
Oh, there's our Australian representation.
There's our Australian representation.
Thank you, Smug, for pointing that out for diversity.
Yeah, I think this issue it's one of the better issues as a what if, basically, if more Kryptonians came to the planet. It does seem to be a bit of a repeating trope, though, like with Zod, and I guess there's other Kryptonian villains as well, that they always seem to come to Earth and want to either like conquer it and reshape it into Krypton's image, serve as a new home. But it's a decent issue.
Oh, and they mock Superman too for they tell him, like, "Oh, you're a scientist, son." They simply call him a nerd. It's like, you know what you're capable of, you know what you can do here, but yet you just you squandered it. And he says, "Well, maybe I could have done more." He acknowledges that, yes, maybe I could have done more to help humanity along, but it didn't feel it's my place. I'm a scientist, son. It's my place to observe and let them develop on their own.
So I think this was the scene you were referring to, Spirit Scar, where he's saving them and explaining to them what his motivations are for everything that he's done on this planet. He tells them that they're not barbarians, and that he's been taught to show respect for his elders. And they're endeared by his benevolence.
I like that dialogue right there too. "I'm proud to call you my kin. Krypton's great heart lives on in you." Like they're almost like ashamed by their behavior, and they realize for all the derision they had labeled upon him, they were wrong, and they come to see that, and they see that he is a great man, and that he says like he's the best of them, right, or something like that. So I think, again, this is one of those scenes that just communicates so much of the character and the fact that he landed where he landed as a baby by those two individuals, the Kents, and he was taught those specific values that helped inform him become Superman. It's not just that he has the powers from the sun that makes him Superman. It's his upbringing. It's the values he was instilled with that make him Superman as well.
And this actually gets explored a couple of times in this book as well, that the powers are a burden, right? And he seems to be the only one that carries them well. Everybody who's been...
sad that I'm flying.
Everybody that gets these powers gets taken by them, and Superman doesn't. He manages to still keep himself elevated above his nature. So, his enhanced nature. But yes, so here he sends them off, and they become bodies in the Phantom Zone. Did you
This
have any
scene was
comments?
very well adapted in the animated movie too. I think Dwayne McDuffie wrote the adaptation for that DC animated movie, and there was a couple little minor changes that I thought worked really well in that adaptation. Just little bits of change in the dialogue.
I think Dwayne McDuffie did the film, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he wrote the
Or-
screenplay
or- yeah.
adaptation.
Dwayne
Yeah.
Yeah, Dwayne McDuffie, he's a really, really solid writer, so they got a good person to do that.
Did you have any comments you wanted to add? Sneak peek, super peek to this issue?
Not really. It's a pretty simple issue. There's not really too much to say about it.
Okay. So moving on.
The moon gets fixed, by the
The
way.
moon gets fixed.
The moon gets fixed. That's the important thing.
Well, I think the moon
Moonshine-
gets
Okay. Another
Moonshine
gets
needs to
fixed in
know.
this issue.
iconic cover. Look at that.
Yes, absolutely.
I was creeped out by this one as well.
This one is a little creepy, I guess. Just a little, not overly creepy.
Yeah, it's not. It's not like a 10 on the creep scale, but there's just this little like, the world in my hands.
Well, he's the caretaker of the Earth.
I'm oddly turned on by this because he's got the afterglow face.
Well, who would like to tackle synopsis for issue 10? Don't make me call in the class.
We're gonna make you call in the class.
Volunteers, please. This is-
Blacklist Universe says that we have an artist who we needed an artist on this panel, someone who could give us an artist perspective.
Yes, not a fan of Quietly's art.
There we go.
Sneak peek, why don't you run us down?
I actually really can't remember what happens in this issue, so I guess it's completely forgettable. The only thing I've really like to notice is that Superman's actually starting to look pretty sickly now. You can see his hands and his face are looking more sullen and lined, and he's writing his last will and testament.
So this one doesn't have a lot in it. It just has Superman curing cancer, right?
Oh yeah, this is the issue where he tries to set up Kandor, tries to solve the people of Kandor's problem. Yeah.
The Bottle City of Kandor. That whole issue is this. And there's a really moving moment too, where there's like a suicidal kind of punk goth chick in a building, and like that's a great scene too, where like someone's about to kill themselves and Superman just shows up and calmly just puts his hand on her, embraces her, and just a beautiful, moving image. The image alone just speaks volumes, and that's the nature of Superman: is compassion.
As much as I have like the broader philosophical issues, I've been very consistent with my stance that this overall comic has some excellent moments, and those moments, when they hit really well, and this is one of them. The Lex Luthor moment really hits pretty solidly, and this is another one that just this is one of those pages that gets shared a lot, because it really shows the fact that Superman would he cares, and he doesn't just care about the city as a whole. He cares about the individuals. Very, very solid moment.
Yeah.
This issue to me had a lot of bizarre moments in it. One is okay. Yes, he's embracing his humanity, whatever humanity he does have, but he's dying essentially. So he's writing his last will. He decides to. He's always kept these people of Kandor, these miniaturized survivors of Krypton, bottled up in his lab, hoping to restore them at some point. And he decides to just stop trying to control that problem so much and just leaves them on another planet. I think Mars or some neighboring planet.
Yeah,
for
I
them
think it's Mars.
Yeah, for them to develop naturally. So he lets go a bit of his omnipotent nature and says, okay, I can't fix every problem. I can't be everything for everybody. So I'm just going to let these people fend for themselves and do what I can to just...
So did he just let go his omnipotence by creating an entire planet?
No, we put them on Mars, but that was the answer to the unanswerable question too. Remember, they surrender, and like in that moment, that's what he's doing. He's surrendering, you know.
Yes.
And he puts Kandor in a place where they can just be on their own. Like he's dying, so he's not going to be around to fix their problem. But they can have some semblance of struggle, you know. So
I'm just busting chops. In this issue, he actually creates like a pocket universe. So it was just kind of funny. He's giving up his omniscience while he creates a pocket universe with life on it. So.
Yes,
and in that pocket universe, a guy in a studio in what looks like the 1920s or 1930s creates another Superman comic.
Okay, so this is something I do have to bring up because, like it or hate it, Grant Morrison has some very interesting ideas about fiction. He has gone multiple times, I think in some of even the interviews that Spirits Guard that you were showing us, but in Super Guides, he goes at this at length, where he says that the fictional characters are more real than real people. He says Superman is more real than I'll ever be, and he's more real than any of us will ever be. He lived before me. He will live long after we're gone. And Grant Morrison actually takes it a step further. Like he really goes into the sort of like this sort of occult kind of spiritual side of it. And so the idea that Superman would actually kind of create a pocket universe that would then actually lead to the comic book in a way that what Grant Morrison's kind of doing here, and this is deliberate, this is very much in tune with what Grant Morrison really kind of thinks about things, the fact that our universe is more fictional, less real than the fictional universe. So in this comic, we have Superman creating our world. Because this is the world without a Superman in it. This is the world where Superman's a comic book character. And this is Grant Morrison showing that in action. But he really believes this. He really does. And he's got some very, I'm trying to be as generous as possible, very interesting ideas about the nature of reality.
Well, I mean, I think that's an interesting take. But honestly, because this issue seems to be about Superman surrendering his place as the caretaker of Earth, or, this universe or this solar system. It's not the universe, it's the solar system. But here he's literally creating a place that where he doesn't exist, and it's just another piece to that acceptance that Superman is having, that the world can survive without him, and that his presence is not implicitly needed. He doesn't have to be all things for all people. He can start letting go of that. And I think that's the symbolism, honestly, because it's weird. It is weird. It's out of place that he's just creating his own universe, because they wanted to show Superman being drawn in our world. But what he's doing is he's letting go of his place in that world. That's the reason why he created this universe, to have that spontaneity where just by random chance life does start to develop on a particular planet, and it develops without his presence, and it continues without him needing to intercede to help it do so. So I think a lot of this issue is about him letting go of his place in the world, because he's dying.
Yeah, it's one of the 12 labors too, is creating life. And this panel right here, this is like a very meta thing. This goes back to like Morrison's old Animal Man run, and if you guys ever read that, but he's very interested in those ideas of how playing with fiction, your perception. I mean, he was doing this kind of stuff, or touching on that in that run as well. So it's a recurring theme in Morrison's work. It's also popped up in other places, and he utilizes that thing of his personal preference, his personal style, like in a really clever way here. That feels natural. I guess if you never read like some Grant Morrison stuff, this would be kind of jarring to see that. But yeah, the fact that he creates this universe, this universe can get along without a Superman, and then within that place, they create the comic book character Superman. Like his presence is so strong, so powerful, it still manifests even in a fictional way.
And this experience is on his road of exploring whatever he has of his human nature, of embracing death, which is a universal experience for all humanity. Velnet says, I disagree. A world without Superman has to invent him.
Yeah, I think that's what I was just saying too. Yeah.
Right, that's the kind of point being made here. Superman attempts to create one, and I think he's been kind of doing it as an experiment to see if a world without Superman can exist. And essentially the answer is no, because even if his presence isn't physically there, it will metaphysically represent itself fictionally, and then we get into the shamanic sigil magic and stuff. Like I said, the thing about reading Grant Morrison is you're technically reading a spell book from Grant Morrison's point of view. So like he kind of he puts things in the books that you.
Well,
can
every
see
book
those-
you read is from the writer's point of view, right? I mean, you could say that, but I mean, Grant Morrison has a strong point of view.
That's what I'm saying. He has a strong belief in that idea. Is kind of the point I'm trying to make.
The one thing though that I don't know. I mean, I guess it's appropriate, but I'm not sure why it keeps getting explored without being addressed. Is he again mentions this duality he has with Clark Kent and how Clark Kent is essentially a lie. He's embracing his own death as Superman and all the human aspects of it, but then he leaves the final story, and he says this pretty explicitly of Superman's passing to Clark Kent. And he refers to Clark Kent in the third person as if that's not him. It's always just been a facade. So there is still this aspect of Superman that is false, that I don't think they really delve into deeply enough to satisfy why they were actually raising this question to begin with, particularly if it seems to color his relationship with Lois, which was a strange aspect for me. All right.
I think the chat is saying stop talking about comic books or they'll kill us.
Moving on. So issue 11, Superman is dead.
Don't worry, chat. Issue 11. There's only 2 more to go, and you're free. We're all going to be free.
Class is almost over.
There will be a test, however, so I hope you were taking notes.
Yes, copious notes, please. Okay. Would anyone like to take over the synopsis duties? Any member of the class?
Yeah. So this is part of the 2-part finale. This is kind of the climax. It begins with a very interesting moment with essentially, I think it's the United Nations giving a death sentence, which I think is, in my mind, it seems pretty a very strange thing to do. But Lex Luthor's pretty bad guy. With him trying to kill the sun and all. Because at the very beginning, the whole sun thing, and this was also a kind of a throwback to, I think, the first Superman movie when Superman was, Gene Hackman was the real estate developer. So the idea was that if he fiddled with the sun and then he invested in water, he could make a killing on money. And so that's just a intense war against humanity, against the entire planet. So he's basically sentenced to die for it. And so he's given the electric chair, but Lex Luthor had, the seeds of this being planted earlier, has managed to grab a hold of the superpower for a day serum. And so as opposed to dying, he gets to be Superman for a day while Superman technically is on his last legs. And not only that, but he's gotten an ally, Solaris the Tyrant Sun. I have to admit, I think Solaris the Tyrant Sun is a awesome, cool supervillain.
Oh, yeah.
This was my first introduction to the character, and I was like, this guy is badass. So first off, he just has an awesome name. He's the Tyrant Sun, and he's basically, his superpower is he's a red sun. He's just he's technically was a solar computer. So he's technically a robot, but he has the power of he's a red sun, and also he is a sun. So that's like a really, really cool bad guy idea. It's kind of like Ego, the Living Planet. You have this character is essentially...
Is the character an old
celestial
character
body.
with us, or is it a new character? Is it an old character with us, or is it new?
I think he is older. This was my first introduction to him, but I think he might be a legacy character. I could be wrong. I'm not sure. But either way, he's freaking cool. And so, the sun comes to go to kill, and it's obviously plays into some of the sort of metaphors going on here. We have Superman, who represents the good sun. Now he has to go literally fight the bad, evil sun. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor is on Earth, causing a ruckus, which is a bit of an understatement. And his niece gets to, act kind of evil and bad. And it's basically it kind of ends on the cliffhanger of, Superman's in trouble, essentially, because Lex Luthor attacks the Daily Planet while Clark is in his Clark getup, but he's again he's dying. So we have Superman at his lowest point, and the odds could not be greater.
You're forgetting the most important part, Twitless. That Sun Eater who you were disparaging earlier shows up to help Superman fight Solaris, and in doing so, sacrifices its life to help Superman.
Oh no, a bunch of suns will live.
That's right.
I had mixed feelings on that one. They're like, oh no, it's like this beloved pet that died. And you do have that kind of brief moment of, oh no, it died. And then it's like, yes, and a bunch of solar systems will live.
I did want to show this panel, Twitless. You were asking that I...
Yes. Okay, so this is one of my... this is a technical aspect that I had a slight beef with Quietly on. So if you scroll to the middle there, if you can zoom in a bit, the two middle panels. This is something Quietly does a bit, and it took me a while to really kind of, again, encapsulate this, but he'll do this thing where he shows, in some action scenes, not all, but in some action scenes, I actually got a bit lost because he would show the before and then the after, but not the actual action. So here we see Batgirl with a tank, and then the car is gone because she blew it up with her disintegrator gun. But she has to say, Positronic Cannon, I love you, or you would just go, what happened to the car? And again, you can read between the lines there, but in a lot of what I would say good classic comic book storytelling, we would have seen the in-between action shots. But here we get the before and after. And Quietly does this a few times throughout the run, and I didn't much care for it. Again, it played into the idea that Grant Morrison and Quietly were focusing more on the moments and not as much the action. But the heart of superhero action storytelling is the action. But they're drawing attention to the metaphors more than the action. So it's a very different type of... but yeah, it shows, to me, this encapsulates the artistic vision of All-Star Superman. They're focused on the big all-star moments, but not the actions necessarily that lead to those moments, whereas most fans of superhero comics tend to want to see the actions that lead to those moments as well.
But there's plenty of Superman comics you can get with just the action and the mindless explosions and slugfest. I mean, you know what it looks like. You can fill that in between the panels. Like, they don't need to... That's not really the heart of the story. The heart of the story is the emotions, is the relationships Superman has with all his friends and family. It is this archetypal, mythical story. I'm not peeved because I didn't see a car explode.
Right, I
can picture that in my mind, you know?
Right, it's just, to me, this is why... in my mind, ultimately, I don't know if I can say this is a genuine Superman story. It's a story it's different. And again, some people really like that.
Well, yeah, it's different, but I think you could go beyond just like the just mindless like slugfest and explosion. I think that enough of that is here in the story. It is. But I mean, just because like this one moment that's not so important, just like I think blowing up a car, it's not, the stakes aren't there for that, you know?
I get your point, and I know you're not saying this, but I do think it needs to be said that those other comics that had the slugfests in them aren't less meaningful because they have the slugfests in them. Not only by virtue of that. There's plenty of very meaningful, like, again, For the Man Who Has Everything, by Alan Moore, big slugfest with Mongol, one of, probably in my mind, one of the top Superman stories of all time. And it's a big old slugfest at the heart of that. But it's also a lot more than that. So it's just a very different style of storytelling.
We get the fight, the duke out at the very end, but like this particular moment, like it wasn't crucial to see that car blow up. It was just a random car. There was no emotional stakes or investment for that.
I was just using this as an example of the difference in storytelling techniques.
Yeah.
Here.
I think you're right. I think you picked up on something, and you probably are correct. But I don't know if I agree with you. Philosophically, sure, that's the most important thing.
I see it. Yeah. Okay, that's my point.
Okay.
We've done that one to death.
Well, moving on, I guess, to the final issue.
Good news, everyone in chat. It's the final issue. It's number 12. We're almost so close to being free.
We're somehow torturing Smug Pug with this review, but maybe Smug Pug would like...
I think we're torturing everybody with this review, well read. Chat is not happy. I've never seen Chat this unhappy. Jabba left, for crying out loud.
Well, Chat wanted blood, and we're doing a roundtable discussion, so it is a bit different. I can understand why some chat members are not happy.
Thank you for listening to NPR and our roundtable discussion. We will get back to Dmitry Zoshtakovich month.
We're allowed to experiment with this channel. It doesn't have to always be the same thing, right?
Speaking of not all experimenting, let's talk about Grant Morrison.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to start with this cover, and I'm going to say that I'm not opposed to this art, but I'm opposed to this being a cover. I think this would make a great panel in the book, but as a cover, compared to some of the more, I guess, iconic images that we've seen, this one does feel a little bit lackluster. Iconic. But yeah, like I do love this. If this was a panel, like, you know, we've got Solaris up in the sky, we've got Lex here. He's now got the super serum flying through the sky, shooting green lasers, which, you know, obviously green's his color, with a Superman with a gravity gun hiding behind some cover, getting ready to take a pot shot. This would have made a brilliant panel in the book. I just disagree with its use as a cover. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Well, as for the final issue, yeah, you're probably right, but it does communicate the story. But yeah, I guess I agree with you, Smug. If it's not iconic enough, yeah.
I love the way the Lex's posture there. Like, I'm gonna copy that for Omega Girl at some point. Like, that's a really great villain. Like, just the suave, I'm blowing stuff up with my hands behind my back.
See,
I love that.
And that's the credit to Frank Quitely. Like, what he captures is the body language and the physicality of these people. Even if people have issues like with how he draws faces or whatever you want to say about his art.
And in that panel,
he is giving performances with how he draws these characters, like Lex Luthor's stance and Clark Kent, how he stands with this whole thing like hunched over.
Right. And in that shot, because he's got the laser eyes, you can't see Lex's face. You just see his body language. So I think that's why it hits even better.
So I guess to summarize this issue and get everyone out of class extra early, Superman and Lex fight. Superman uses his brain to defeat Lex by using a gravity gun on Lex, which increases his metabolism, which means the super serum that should last for 24 hours speeds up and wears off extra quick. During that time, Superman reveals to Lex Luthor that Solaris has betrayed him, is now turning the sun into a blue sun. And this culminates at the same time as Superman's body begins breaking down, turning into pure energy, and he flies off into the blue sun, cracking into the core, destroying the blue around it, and goes in there to become the Sun God Man and restores the sun's core. Everyone wins. Everyone's happy. The crisis is over. Bring! That's the bell, kids. Time to leave the room.
Superman sacrifices. This is a
great
move. Technically,
there's a great moment with Lex Luthor when he shoots Lex Luthor with a gravity gun and he accelerates his powers. He gets overwhelmed with them, and in that moment, Lex Luthor sees reality as Superman sees it and understands it. And what really come to understand, people talk about Superman is a god, and we know that, but really what's communicated here is that Superman is really like an enlightened being, like Jesus Christ or Buddha, and that's why he does what he does. That's why he believes what he believes. That's why he has this undying faith in humanity, because he sees like the connection of everything, and it really shapes his worldview because he sees reality at this level, at this infinitesimal level where everything is connected. And Lex Luthor, in this brief moment, sees it in that way and almost has like this epiphany where like he begins to even to relate to Superman, understands why he does what he does, but then this is this moment, he's got him all like in this tier 8 thing, then Superman gives him a right hook and defeats him.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's a slugfest.
There you go. There we go.
Thank you, Spirit Scar. That's exactly where I wanted to summarize this. You did it perfectly. So, yes, there was the ultimate honesty that was attained here, and it was the convergence of Superman in his human form as well as in his godlike form that nobody else has been able to achieve at the same balance as he has. And so that's exactly where I was going, and that's the reason why I think he ultimately transcends, and he becomes the engine for the sun. He becomes the thing that feeds all life on Earth in a way that was never possible before, in a universal, all-encompassing, fundamental kind of way that he couldn't quite achieve in his previous state. He essentially is the sun at that point. He is the ultimate caretaker for life on Earth. So it's almost like he died and resurrected quite frankly.
Yeah, he is a solar deity, and he is giving life to all of Earth as the sun and keeping the sun going.
That's right.
Symbolism.
Fulfilling his original role in a way that was never quite possible before, in a very higher form.
Symbolism.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a larger than life epic mythology that Morrison is invoking here. And for me, like, this is a quintessential Superman story, because I think people have flirted with this idea, but they just Morrison just dives into it full on and gives you this classic archetypal mythical story, embracing Superman tropes from the 50s and 60s. Like, clearly that's the era Morrison loves the most, the very sci-fi pulpy qualities, which are here in spades, But then it also goes into this classic mythology and in a really powerful way. And I think it's beautiful. This ending of this book for me is quite beautiful and quite moving.
Yeah, I agree. It is beautiful. It's an amazingly crafted story, and some of these themes that it explores are really, really well done. Well, I guess we can move on to the follow-up questions. Now that we've gone through the entire synopsis, there's a couple of points that we can touch on in summary.
It only took 2 hours to get through the synopsis. I thought we agreed the synopsis would be brief. Instead, we're nearly at the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, I think we hit on a lot of the summary points.
Yeah, we kind of covered it as we went. So I think we probably just kind of wrap up our concluding thoughts. Would probably be the best.
I think this is just the intermission, right? We've got 2 more hours left.
Yeah, let's all go to the lobby.
Well, let's
get ourselves a treat.
To be fair, the other long-form review that I've seen for this book only covers 6 issues, and it's an hour long. And they don't even touch on a lot of the topics that we're discussing here. So it's a 12-issue series. It's pretty dense. I mean, it would be one thing if it was just all superficial and meant to be bubblegum entertainment. You just enjoy it and throw it away. But there is a lot to delve into here.
Or even like the kind of just the fun kind of, like, I wouldn't say throwaway, but like the Jimmy Olsen issue. That's still like he's just giving Jimmy Olsen that moment, But that is like just say a lighter one, because I think in the past Superman stories you'd see Jimmy Olsen as the guy who does help Superman out when he needs it, or when he's in a jam. Jimmy Olsen has played that role, so I think he was just again invoking that to kind of just embrace and encapsulate all the Superman lore and mythos, in a single story.
Right. Well, so in summary, just a couple of questions, I guess. The art we touched on a couple of times, but ultimately, did it suit the storytelling, or did it fail?
I think it suited the story just fine. I mean, like Spirit Scar said, some of the most iconic images of Superman come from this series, from the covers and in the books.
I thought it was hit or
miss. I
miss.
think it worked. The big space vistas and flying on the cosmos, the whole science fiction elements and like the lizard monsters and a lot going for it. I don't know, like if a lot of artists wouldn't be able to pull everything off that's in the story.
I liked it a lot of the moments in space. For example, when he's up in space with Krypto and the Sun Eater, or fighting the Kryptonian astronauts. There's no text or any dialogue whatsoever, so it almost gives that eerie feeling that space is silent and isolated. Was good.
It was hit or miss for me. It was definitely focused on the moments, the iconic moments, and some of those moments hit really, really well. It wasn't very strong sequence-oriented storytelling, which I'm very much a fan of for superhero comics. And like I said, just Frank Quietly's style in some places could be a bit jarring, especially with his faces, especially if that face was going to take up a whole page or a whole panel. Although, like I said, I really like the way he drew Lois, which Well-Read and I disagreed on. So
yeah, I like cute Lois too. I don't know why anyone would be anti-cute Lois.
I'm anti-cute Lois.
Superman deserves a hot chick, come on.
Yeah, every man deserves a hot chick.
Well, I don't know about that. Not every man.
It is a right. It's in the Constitution. Look it up.
Sure.
Not NASA or something like that.
Well, I mean, at varying degrees, is that they can at least have a subscription to her OnlyFans, right? They don't necessarily have to have her living with them. Right, but I liked, to me, the art. There was a lot of emotion. I thought a lot of expression that I thought was very unique, and um, it was very well crafted. Like I didn't feel like there were crazy scenes here like I'd see in other books. Expressions that just didn't make any sense. There were things that were really evoked an emotional response because they were so well done. Um, as you mentioned earlier, the physicality. Yeah, I thought it was really nicely portrayed and made everybody look very human. Um, and I could feel that there was just definitely um, some very creative approaches taken here and how this character was represented that I haven't seen before. So, um,
Yeah, to me, a lot of the characters felt very distinctive too, like how they were drawn, or how they stood, or how they carried themselves. Like they all. Also, just obviously their dialogue as well, but just how they appeared, and how they stood. They all had their own personalities.
Yucky Gum says, "What Lois Lane isn't hot? Well read. She's hot in this. Um, she's just too hot. I mean, I guess that's my criticism. So,
She's a 9 and she should be a 7.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, she works for a newspaper, right? Like, how many nines do you
Jeez.
have running around there?
Well, I see a lot of hot news anchors on Fox News, so I don't know.
That's the anchors, but like she's she's a press writer, right?
She's a reporter. There's
Pounding the beat, so trying to dig up the story.
Well, how do you guys feel about is it Margot Kidder, who portrays Lois Lane in the original Superman movie series?
Yeah,
Would you say she's hot? I'd say she's more just
Nah.
like kind of plain and wholesome.
She's like a 6 or 7,
yeah,
7 on a good day.
yeah. I mean, exactly, and I mean even the new Superman movies.
Amy Adams, right?
Jimmy
Terry
Adams.
Hatcher is smoking hot.
Oh, Terry Hatcher. Oh yeah. Boom. Boom goes the dynamite.
Drop the mic.
Yeah. Well, so art we're happy with. It sounds like for the most part. Switless has conflicting opinions, but now story. I mean, we've gone through the entire synopsis. We know that there are some issues we like and some we don't. But does it work as a whole?
Well, that's what I was getting to earlier when I said I think this is a good Superman comic, but the reason why it's a good Superman comic is because it's so different to Superman comics. Like, we get that relatability to Superman with his mortality, the times he's like playing with his dog and the Sun Eater, and these little touching moments that I guess you really don't see in other Superman stories just because he's Superman. But ultimately, the reason I say it's a good Superman comic but not a good comic is because I feel like Superman is a relic from an era that's past. I mean, Superman was big in the 30s and 40s when children needed something inspirational to read about while they were fighting the Nazis. I think in modern times, the Caped Crusader, or whatever you want to call him, this Superman, he's almost like he's out of time. He's a character out of time. That's just how I feel about it.
Does everyone agree?
Well, yeah, I don't know how many kids today are that excited about Superman. I think they could be. I think if the way Morrison embraces the wild sci-fi pulpy elements here, and I think if you were to really do that like in the comic, I think it would be exciting for kids to read. If it just him on crazy sci-fi adventures where other dimensions or aliens or robots. Like in that last issue, it was a really great scene that we didn't talk about, but Superman had all these robots in the Fortress of Solitude because he's not there all the time, and he has all the zoo of rare animals from all over the universe and other things that have to be maintained. And those robots all felt a sense of like loyalty to Superman, all went off with him to fight, even though they were all ended up being destroyed in the process, but they gave their lives because these robots felt love for Superman, and just one of them stayed behind to maintain the Fortress of Solitude and whatever universe animals he has there. But great moments like that. But what works, I think what's interesting about this is more so than a lot of other series, maybe unless like Watchmen, but it's an overarching story that works as like a single book, but each single issue is like a satisfying self-contained story. I mean, Watchmen did it more effectively, but there's most times they don't do that. People complain about, like, oh, it was written for the trades, but this, I mean, I remember I got this when it came out too, as like individual issues, and each individual issue was satisfying. Then you put it all together and it has the overarching themes of he's slowly coming to terms with his mortality and Lex Luthor coming back into play. And
Well, so I'll take the con because I kind of disagree with it vehemently. I don't think the idea of Superman is something that's out of time. I think that the pulp and the kitsch and all of those weird things in his hidden fortress and silly adventures that he used to go on, the things that were made to draw people and entertain them. Maybe that's dated, sure. I could see where that needs to be updated, and that definitely gets it here in this story. But what inspired Superman, what was actually drawn out on paper when the creators were devising this concept of who is Superman, I mean, I think that's timeless. The idea of the common man being able to excel past his own limited capabilities to do things that are extraordinary and necessary. And I think the problem is that I think the idea of celebrating the common man is what's become passe, frankly. I think everything has to be so over the top and shallow and flashy that's what's really been lost. And that's the reason why we have to embrace the idea of Superman as an alien and not him as just an ordinary man, somebody who works like a blue collar, downtrodden kind of job and is still capable of these things. The idea of Clark Kent is just a throwaway thing, a total facade, and to be not even to be looked at or considered. That was the essence of what they were drawing out in the beginning. They wanted this to be just a guy who's, earning just a little bit better than minimum wage among the commoners, living an ordinary life, but doing these amazing things because they wanted that to be seen in everybody around them. And you're right, Pug. Like, it was written in a time when people were going off to war and doing these extraordinary things. But I mean, those qualities are innate in humans, and they're timeless, and they're just not explored anymore. And I don't know why people have lost a sense of them. But I was kind of hoping for a re-exploration of that original characteristic in this story, and I didn't get it. I got an upgrade on the kitsch campiness, which is nice. I got an allegory for a living god who dies and then resurrects. But I didn't get the essence of what Superman was when he was first established, and I think that's a tragedy.
You see the everyman quality, though, in his relationship with Lois and his mourning his father and just his love for his family. I think that's where you see the everyman quality. It just his basic emotional vulnerabilities that any human being would experience. It's his emotional relationships with his friends and family, but he's still doing these extraordinary things. But
I think the issue that Well-Read and I may be having, because I think I'm more in Well-Read's camp, is that the pieces are there, but the whole is not. Is what I'm not getting. Like I said, and I have to say this: as much as I have my issues with Grant Morrison, I would rather read this than a lot of what I have read from Warren Ellis, because a lot of what I just wrote a classic superhero story, The Adventures of Omega Girl, now on Indie Planet. You get it for $1.99 or $3.99 for a print. There's my shameless plug. But I love that type of storytelling, and Warren Ellis hates it, and a lot of what you are and what you bring to a story will come out. If you hate what you're writing, it's going to come out. And Grant Morrison's love comes out, and I have to respect that. Even though I'm I think you misunderstand parts of Superman, so the story feels kind of off to me at times. At the end of the day, his love for the character, his love for the genre, it comes out of the storytelling. It's palpable, and I appreciate that, and I respect that, even though I have my issues with his writing style. And a lot of times when I've read Warren Ellis, I just feel the hatred, or the loathing, and I just like, I don't know, it just really really turns me off, and like I would rather read Grant, even if he hurts my head and I go, that's weird.
Yeah.
Well, Morrison respected this character enough too to like not, because if you're at Morrison's personal passion projects, like stuff he's done with Vertigo, like a book called The Filth, that's a very dark book, very violent, very strange. And I heard him say in an interview that he actually go against his natural tendencies when writing Superman, that he had to channel in his most saintly self, and that was out of respect and love for the character, that he went against his own tendencies, and wanted to go in this elevated self to write this elevated character.
I can appreciate that.
Did you want to add, Smug? I saw you unmuted.
To be honest, no. I mean, I feel like this book is good in that I don't have to read 60 years of Superman to get a Superman story, and this touches upon, I guess, the tributes and homages throughout the decades. The only issue I have with it is that it's a Superman story. I don't like Superman. I don't like superheroes. I don't hate Superman as much as I did when I was, I guess, in my teens, where I just felt like he was overpowered and he never had any true challenges. I mean, I think Superman works better in movies and part of the Justice League and these like animated movies and cartoons. In the comics, I think we can all agree, when you think of comic book superheroes, Superman is the embodiment of all that. Like, he is the timeless character. Everybody knows who he is. You'd have to travel pretty far across the world to find someone who hasn't heard of Superman. But I mean, that's also the problem. Like, he's up and elevated so high that I don't know. It's just, I've never been interested in Superman. Like, I'm glad I read this. I'm glad I read a Superman story. I think, like I said, as a Superman story, it works well, mainly because I don't have to read all these other issues, and I can get a taste of what Superman's about. But yeah, ultimately not a fan. I wouldn't read this again, or any other Superman book, if I'm being quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's how I felt too. I thought it was a great comic, not a Superman story. I mean, you're saying like you're not a fan of the character, but I think also because the character is not really properly reflected here. It draws on enough tropes to make it for a good story, and it knows how to make them good. Frankly, like a lot of them are reinvented and presented in new ways to make them good. But it to me, it's not the core of a Superman story. And
But I mean, I disagree with that.
book.
I mean, I think it captures like his humanity and his love for humanity, the character Superman, and it crystallizes why he is what he is and why he has the viewpoint that he does and why his optimism, his eternal faith. I think that's communicated in this book beautifully. So I would disagree with you there. I think this is a great book to give to someone who's never read a comic book. Honestly, I think you could give them All-Star Superman, because it's just so intimidating. What are they going to read? There's so many decades of material. This is a great book. Someone who's never read a Superman book or who's never read a comic book, you could give them this, and they can have a satisfying experience.
My pick for best Superman story to hand to someone who hasn't read comics before is Superman Birthright. That's the one I would hand, because I feel like it's not as I feel like this comic is, because it's a love letter. I feel like you need to have more lore and history behind you to appreciate it. I think for an entry level person, Superman Birthright would probably be a better, because like that's more of a straightforward. This is just kind of a traditional Superman story, and this is a story for people. Again, this is it's like caviar. It's for refined taste, and you're going to be able to kind of eke out some of the the flavors there. I don't think this works as well as regular Superman storytelling. That's kind of been the thing I've been wrestling with it, because it's very different, and so like it is this sort of this finer wine that you can appreciate, but like Superman's Bud Light, like he's the accessible beer for everyone essentially in America, I guess.
Yeah.
But not everyone wants a Bud Light, though.
No, that's fair. Like I'll definitely concede that point. But like, but Superman is he is the template for the superhero comic. He's the Bud Light. So like again,
Well-
if I were handing someone who'd never read a Superman comic before, I wouldn't hand them like this super like craft beer, to use my crazy metaphor. I'd be like, here's your run of the mill, here's the best of the run of the mill. Because like it's like an Agatha Christie novel, right? It's a genre piece of fiction. It functions in a very particular way. This is a different story. This is a metaphorical love letter. So it's a different beast altogether. It's good for different reasons than what Superman typically is good for. That's why I'm kind of conflicted about it.
But I think like someone who just like who's not really interested in like reading Superman regularly or just like reading a bunch of Superman stories, I think this captures a lot of just the characters. It's capturing the flavor and style of like the 50s, 60s, like weirder, crazier sci-fi Superman stories too. Like, and you kind of, I think more modern people know the more like modern, just Superman fighting Lex Luthor with not necessarily that much crazy stuff happening, even though the comics are a long history of being really wild and really over the top, and Morrison just embraces all of that. So I mean, I guess it depends also on the individual and what their sensibilities are. Some people might just like a more cleaner, kind of neater, traditional kind of story, and some other people might appreciate this more philosophical, mythic kind of story. So
I think it does. I think it is very telling about this whole conversation because Superman is a character who can really stretch the bounds here. He can really appeal. There's almost like a Superman for every generation and a Superman for every reader. That's kind of the beauty of him in a sense.
Well, the writers have been reinventing him over the years. So, yeah, they've definitely stretched the mythology of the character quite a bit.
Well, I hope you guys saw that we had a celebrity in chat. Vin Diesel's been going off about family.
Well, I think we can move into verdict at this point. I feel like we've touched on all the points that we wanted to make, unless there was anything else that anyone wanted to discuss. I'll take that as a resounding no. And
I think we've discussed it to death.
Yeah, obviously we discussed this right into a good old solar death.
No, I mean, thank you for doing this. I know it can be exhausting because it's a long book and a lot of things to discuss, but it's valuable to have something like this available for people to go over and to digest.
No, I enjoyed this conversation. Yeah, this was a good conversation. This was a great NPR.
Sure, it's not a wasted effort at all. So yeah, for verdicts, would anybody like to jump in and summarize, say what they thought?
Well, what everyone in the chat wants to know is, Smug Pug, is this 7 out of 10 Woodback again?
Well, I think it's good that we have like a wider range opinions on this book. I mean, Spirit Scar clearly appreciates it like as a Superman story, and a comic book. Well Read appreciates it as a comic book, but not necessarily a Superman story. I think it works well as a Superman story, but not really as a comic book. And Twitless, I'm not really too sure what you thought. I'd say this. I'd probably never read this again. I'm glad I did. But it's mainly just due to the fact that I'm not really interested in Superman. I can appreciate the technical aspects of it, like the art was fine, the coloring's fine, and it does have all these iconic moments and images, as Spirit Scars pointed out. For me, though, the stuff I really enjoyed was just the small little moments, like Superman playing with Krypto and the relationship he had with the Sun Eater. The entire issue 5, where him and Lex Luthor are conducting an interview on death row. I think that'll stand out as my favorite issue and what I enjoyed most about reading this. The problem is it's 12 issues. So liking Superman play with his dog for 2 pages and liking one whole issue out of 12, it's not really. I guess it's cost benefit. There's not enough there for me. I do recognize that it's probably more for fans of Superman. Like, they know all the little Easter eggs, who Atlas is, who Samson is, what Solaris is, when Superman found the Sun Eater, and all these little moments. But as someone who doesn't read Superman, a lot of that's just lost on me. I do feel that it is a good Superman story, that if you did pick it up and give it to someone who had never read Superman before, like me, they might get something out of it without having to go and read decades worth of the material. But ultimately, I think I'm just not interested in Superman. Although I don't let that bias my opinion. It is still a beautiful book. It's smarter than most books, and I think it does tell a good Superman story at the end of the day. So I give it an 8 out of 10, but with the caveat that I would never read again just because it's not really for me or to my tastes.
Let's just go down the line. Twitless, what did you think?
Like I said, I'm kind of conflicted on it. I think to sum it up succinctly, I'm probably more in Well-Read's camp. I think to say that I think this works as it's a solid comic book. It doesn't resonate for me as well as a Superman story. Like I said, I think there's some philosophical differences that I have with it, but it has some very strong moments, and those strong moments are pretty good. As a story, reading it through, I enjoyed some solid chunks of it. There were some parts like the Bizarro storyline that lost me a bit. It wrapped up pretty well. Like I said, this is a book I think that really succeeds. When it does succeed, it succeeds on the strength of those iconic moments, like we have here. One of the last images we have, Superman just the sun god healing the sun. Again, it's a tough one. It's a tough one to rate. I rate it as I'm conflicted.
A score of conflicted from Twitless. Spirit Scar, would you like to summarize?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, I'm not even like a big Superman fan or anything, but I love Grant Morrison and his writing. I mean, I don't hate Superman, say as other people do anything, but I might think it's a phenomenal book. I think it balances like the single stories along with the overarching themes. I think it taps into just the mythological elements of Superman and these things that are just are iconic in his lore, in his background. And for me, even the stuff that some people said was kind of like they throw away stuff, but I think it's enough like there to kind of let it breathe. So it's not just the single driving story hammering its way home to that conclusion, but in a way, like if you gave this someone who never read a Superman comic, you still have those kind of lighter moments of like, say, with Jimmy Olsen doing his thing or something like that, where it's like not so like prescient, like driving forward to that conclusion. There's like just like, oh, a day in the life of Superman, or like, oh, the other example, like when the lizard people just show up all of a sudden, because that's just the kind of crazy thing that happens in Superman's world. So you do get the taste of what like Superman is, what he's about, what his comics are about, what the Superman lore is about, when some just crazy thing like that might happen. And so I think it's a good introduction for the character. People don't know it, but of course people who do know it are going to see all the homages throughout, there's so much of it laid in. So I would say it is a definitive Superman story, and one that you could put up there with any of them, and a great one to give to someone who's never read a comic book at all. You could give them this book, if they're interested in reading, say, a superhero comic. I think this is a book you could give them.
Would you like to give a score, or?
I love Grant Morrison. I love his writing. Obviously, I love Morrison's more personal stuff more, but like normally I would never even give a crap about Superman, quite honestly. This book makes me invested in Superman, and it is moving too. It's a moving story as well, especially as it pulls together near the end. And I think the characters have a lot of strength. The strength of characterization, especially with Lex Luthor and Superman, their dynamics, and even Lois as she drifts off. So I think there's a lot going for it. I mean, I can understand the criticisms people have in other elements of it, but I'm not really a fan of rating books. I really love the book, and I would strongly recommend this for anyone interested in mythology, is interested in these characters. And this is definitely a book I would recommend anyone who's never picked up a comic. So,
well, for me, I'd give it an 8 out of 10 also. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I thought it was a great read, well written. I'm actually a huge fan of the art. I love Frank Quietly's stuff. I love something that's just slightly off kilter and unusual, but feels very natural. And honestly, more than anything, actually, I think the art sold me on this book. I like that there's a million ideas coming out of Grant Morrison, and there's things explored here, like he's communicating with himself in the future. what turns me off a little bit is Morrison delves into science fantasy. Sometimes he's accurate in some of the things that he's describing. Other times, he's just making stuff up, and I feel that a little bit off-putting. I don't know why there needs to be an underverse when there's a Phantom Zone already.
Morrison likes to impress you with how smart he can sound. That is something he does. That is something he does.
And so I've been a fan of his writing, but I like. Sorry, go ahead. Spirits go.
Well, I'll say, it is fiction. It is science fantasy, right? It's the job of the writer to make some stuff up.
Right. It's just that whereas some character be like, oh wow, you're lifting up something as heavy as a mountain. Morrison will point out it's 1.6 quintillion tons. It's like it has to sound smart. It's like I said, it's just a quirk of his writing. I think part of it is the fact that he's always lived in the shadow of Alan Moore, so he's always feeling like he has to prove himself, even though in Super Gods he likes to point out, as part of this, that he's like, I was a magician way before Alan Moore was. He really has this sort of like Coleridge, Samuel Taylor Coleridge thing going on.
Right.
Well, and Alan Moore is kind of like the LS. He's a little bit more hateful too, you know.
I've liked his simpler stories. I like when he writes Batman. He really was able to cut loose. I mean, it worked in some areas, in some areas it didn't. I don't know why he had to create an entire universe to give us, to make a thematic point. But, I mean, for the most part, I liked it because it was interesting. It was interesting to read it when it did work. There were some throwaway issues. There were some good themes. I thought the theme that was being explored that I liked and I thought worked really well is what it was like for a living God to have to give exposition for and understand his condition as a human. So that's what I was most attracted to, the fact that this was Superman being grounded in a sense. And going through the human experience, but as a god. So I didn't connect with him in his experience, but I did feel like it was an interesting case study of what that journey would be like. And then having him transcend at the end, I think, was the perfect way to wrap all of this up. And the failings that everyone else had in that experience, he gave explicit examples of other people going through the same things that Superman did and failing marvelously. So there was something unique about Superman that he was able to weather that burden. So I liked it. Ideas were great. Story structure, art, the arc, the themes. I didn't feel like it captured the essence of what Superman is. There might have been enough references to appeal to a lot of fans, and I saw a few of those. Not enough though, because I guess everybody's coming forward and admitting how they feel about the character beforehand. So I'm not either a big Superman fan. I've had moments where I liked him. I was a fan of the movies when they were out, the Richard Donner films. Those were great. And I've read some books that I've enjoyed in the past too. I read Dan Jurgens stuff. That was really great. But I'm not a loyal follower, and I haven't seen him change over the years and know enough about all of these little Easter eggs to really appreciate a story like this. So 8 out of 10, probably would not read again. Too much filler, frankly, to make it worth my time. But enough ideas where I enjoyed the experience going through it the first time and having this discussion. So with that,
Class dismissed.
I'll drop the link. 2.5 hours. Pretty good. So we'll see what kind of...
It's a dedicated audience.
Comic books or I'll kill you.
And I would say even like the filler stuff, which it was still fun though, you know, it was still like, well, maybe you guys don't think that about the Bizarro issues, but the lizard people, the Jimmy Olsen stuff, you know, and the Lex Luthor's niece, it was just fun stuff, you know.
Yeah, the other Kryptonians coming to Earth, that was interesting. I liked that issue. I actually did like seeing Doomsday in this book because I read the Doomsday story when I was young, so that was a nice Easter egg for me. I enjoyed seeing that.
I don't know if Doomsday is as much an Easter egg as it's like very much a cameo, I guess. The Easter egg was when it was on the door, right? I don't know. I'm being.
Plus all these homages he put in there, right?
I'm trying to understand what you're saying, Twitless, but I'm afraid talking about Superman for 2.5 hours has caused my brain
broken our brains.
to melt out of my ears.
See, I could do this for about 6 hours. I love superheroes. I mean, I love them so much. I wrote one.
I do have a question for you, Spirit Scar. I guess. So you do think that this is a good Superman story? Because I was curious. I know you're a Grant Morrison fan. I was just wondering whether your love of this book comes from your love of Grant Morrison as opposed to this book itself. Like, would you consider this one of Grant Morrison's best books, in your opinion, or are there other stories out there that you think he does better?
Well, it depends on what you're in the mood for. I would say this is one of his best books, but I mean, his personal stories are really crazy, like occult science fiction stuff that can get really dark and really violent and really over the top. Some of this stuff was over the top too, but it was still like in a fun, lighthearted way.
Out of Morrison's
what you're in
stuff,
the mood
I
for.
think I would prefer this one, to be honest. Most of the time,
Yeah, I'm
he's
sure
too
you
out
would.
in the
Let's
weeds
go.
for me. He's too out in the weeds for me. Although
Some of it is like just regular Batman run. You might have liked that, don't you think?
Well, I remember it was a Justice League that he did where he had the Aztec. There's some of that was okay. I think.
His X-Men stuff was good too, and his Justice League. I liked his Justice League a lot.
Oh yeah, the X-Men run was great. I think that's the last great X-Men run was Grant Morrison's run, honestly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
the
but-
Justice League stuff Morrison does is like my least favorite of his stuff.
He did We Three, which was it's been forever since I read that. It's memorable because I remembered the friggin' cyborg animals. But he, like I said, he's
We Three is one of his best books.
He did one called, I think it's Unnameable or Nameless, and that was one of the first times where I saw Grant Morrison like really be channeled. He had an axe to grind, and normally I haven't seen him as much axe grindy in that, but that book he was, and really turned me off.
Well, The Filth. Have you read that, Twitless? That's maybe like one of his most like darkest and most violent and fucked up books. Honestly.
Well, yeah, but you can be dark without grinding an axe. Like I said, I think it's Nameless or something. He literally says, "I have an axe to grind," basically against monotheism. I think he called it the people of the book, and he just really was just like working out some issues he had with religion there.
And like
welcome,
normally,
Yakiko.
I don't
Thanks for
find
joining us.
Superman all that integrated. Like this book made me care a lot more.
Oh, we lost Yucky. I'm not sure what happened there. Yeah, I was just introducing him, and he
Yucky knows a lot about Superman too.
I think he might
come back, but Yucky. Yeah, Yucky knows his stuff when it comes to Superman lore, so it'd be interesting to hear his take on it. But yeah,
what do you
normally
think
I'm not
of
a Superman? Fan, though, honestly.
What do you think of Superman Saggy Melons? And what did you think of this 2.5 hour review we just did of talking about him for 2.5 hours without interacting with the chat at all?
I interacted with the chat. I might
if we don't get people to come on to talk about the review, I might wrap it up. And if people want to do call-ins where it's random topics, I'll start up a separate stream for that. I really wanted to keep this one as straight as possible. Hi, Yucky.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey.
Sorry, I was having trouble with my earphones when I came in before.
No worries.
What do you think of All-Star Superman? Yucky, what's your take?
This is one of my favorite Superman books of all time, and the only reason I really wanted to pop on real quickly is because I just wanted to explain, I guess, the perspective of a Superman fan. I'm almost primarily a Superman fan above all other comic characters. So this book really speaks to the Superman fan. Like, I don't think it is for somebody to, like, I wouldn't plop this into somebody's lap that has no idea, you know, what Superman, like you guys were saying, like almost every issue is something that was important to Superman's past. And if you're not getting those references,
But I think someone could be introduced to all that through this book, though. I think that's the beauty of this book. It does encapsulate all those things.
That could be true, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know. I feel like I think a new reader is going to get to that bizarro part and put the book down. They're going to make it to issue 7 and then go, I don't know about this.
Well, I kind of agree with Yucky, and that's what I said. It's like, reading All Star Superman gives me enough about the character that I don't have to go back and read 70 years worth of the character in comics. I mean, there's probably a lot of little Easter eggs and stuff like that went straight over my head, but I can put 2 and 2 enough to know that, there's a relationship that exists already between Superman and Atlas and Samson. I can probably assume that Solaris is an old enemy of his, like they've met before.
But you could end up finding more enjoyment because, like, I think the reason Grant Morrison did this is just like television shows back in the day. You would kind of have the same things happen every year. Like every year, you would have your Superman being challenged by Hercules and Samson for Lois Lane. You'd have your Lex Luthor somehow get Superman's power, and they would just repeat this every year, almost just like, supervillains coming back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is why this book was so great to me, because one of the first Superman books from the 60s I ever had a Hercules challenge for Lois Lane. So when I got to All-Star Superman, it was just like, oh yeah, this is one of those, this is a classic bit, right? Like this is one of those classic things that every year would happen. I think there's at least 5 classic issues of Hercules and Samson challenging Superman for Lois's hand, kind of Popeye style.
So is it modern kitsch, essentially? Is that why it's appealing?
Well, that's also very true, though. That's true in real life, though. Women do those kinds of things. So I don't know if it's just kitsch. I mean, there's a reality to that where women will play those kinds of games, So that's why they wrote it in the 50s, why it still works now in the year 2000 when that book came out.
So I remember one.
Simple.
I remembered early.
I was just going to.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Yucky. Sorry.
I was just going to say real quickly, it's just like a simple cartoon from the 30s. Like every Popeye episode, you had to hit your staples, right? You had to have Olive Oil fight with whatever his name is. You'd have to have Brutus get one over on Popeye. He has to swap Bruto. Does he have 2 names? Anyway, it doesn't matter. but anyway, go ahead.
Bluto. It's Bluto. Sorry.
Yeah, what were you going to say earlier, Toadless?
No, nothing. My brain's frying.
It's like what Morrison's saying about making him relatable, like Superman relatable when he walks his dog, but he walks him around the cosmos and takes him to the moon. And this thing when like, oh look, my girlfriend's flirting with some other guys just to, fucking give me a shit test, but here Lois is flirting with Samson and Atlas. That's what Superman's got to deal with. It's like all these things that people can relate to and understand, but ramped up to this epic, mythological, godlike level,
And how much of Superman are you supposed to relate to? If he's a power fantasy, if you're, you are Clark Kent, you're the meek dude. If you want to, whatever the hell, escape, do you want to explore the humanism of even though I do love that later in the 70s and 80s, we've explored this part of Superman that he was raised by human parents. He actually has Earth morals and things like that. Before all that, he was just kind of this god, right? And I get it how people want to relate to characters, but if you just want the power fantasy, if you just want the, man, I wish I could break through this steel door, something that simple.
Yeah, honestly, I thought it was a great comic, and it was well crafted for what it was trying to accomplish. I just these are things that it references about Superman that I'm not as familiar with. I didn't know that was a drinking game. Let's see how many times Jimmy Olsen can turn into a different form.
Yeah, so, right. There's actually a trade paperback of the amazing transformations of Jimmy Olsen.
He becomes a giant turtle a bunch.
Yeah, if I knew that stuff, I'd probably also be getting a bit of a fanboy, crush on this, because because I would feel like it was fan service as well as being a really good comic.
So
And
Yucky,
really, I've
Someone
always
who's never read those.
Yucky,
I was going to say,
Twitless
someone who's never
mentioned
read those comics, they'll get the flavor.
Right.
Twitless mentioned earlier that there's probably better stories for a first-time Superman reader to read. Do you agree? And do you have any other runs that maybe someone looking to get into Superman for the first time might enjoy more than All-Star Superman?
I mean, he was right with Superman Birthright, that one that Mark Waid did in the, I don't know, was that the early 2000s? That is pretty much treated like another like John Byrne. I think it was actually supposed to be another John Byrne Man of Steel kind of refreshing of the character. It just didn't turn out that way, so they just released it anyway. But yeah, that's pretty good. I don't know how many comics are actually that great. I mean, continuity in comics is really such a new thing with Marvel. Like, what comics are really great for just plopping down? I mean, that's why almost every comic book has that little like paragraph of like Peter Parker bitten by a radioactive spider, blah blah blah. Here's the issue, you know.
Right.
Or are we supposed to assume that limited series are supposed to kind of fall into anyone should grab them?
So there's a DC put out a trade paperback, Superman: The Greatest Stories Ever Told. I think there's a couple volumes of it. I have volume 2. That's a one great starting point for Superman. I think that's one of the ones I read when I was at my public library reading about Superman. It just covers, and it actually covers a wide range of his stories from like past to I think present. So you kind of get a smattering of kind of what Superman has gone through over time, and you get some of Byrne, and you get some of the classic stuff. So those are great starting points as well.
Yeah, I mean, that Man of Steel miniseries from John Byrne, it really is a great like little retelling for any first-time reader, even though that's kind of your more, I don't know, people would, I guess that's when people started saying Superman became irrelevant, right? It was kind of the mid-'80s, '90s. So, I don't know, it's one of those things. Superman, just like, I guess any superhero, is kind of an acquired taste, right? It's like it has, the hero has to capture you.
Yeah.
Yucky, do you think it was the right call for do you think it was the right call for Morrison to really invoke the like 1950s, 60s Superman style with like the kind of sci-fi pulp qualities in the storytelling?
I think so, because Superman has become relatively static since the 80s, since we did like a absolute continuity with him. Like now we're really worried about like, oh, is he going to get married? Is he going to have a family? Back when you didn't even worry about that, he could have romantic relationships with Lana Lang, Lori Lamaris, you know.
Oh, yeah, the 60s, he was making out with a different chick all the time. I remember picking up
Supergirl, his own cousin.
Yeah, well, that's right. There's the ones where he's like, yeah, that's where he goes on. They made a point of it. They're like, on Krypton, cousins are allowed to marry, but sadly, we're not on Krypton.
Yeah, after the Wortham trials, like they were basically willing to do anything to prove that the heroes weren't gay. Like, they kiss anybody.
But yeah, I remember it was there was a collected edition called Superman in the 60s, and I remember picking it up, and I was like, he was macking on a different girl. There were some times it was like, Superman, that's my wife. Like, why are you making out with her? That was like, he got into trouble a couple of times. He was like, I think they were doing was it a Christmas party or something? He was kissing people under the mistletoe, and someone was like, okay, we get it, Superman.
And Spirit Star, what you were talking about Grant Morrison, I mean, it seems like that's what Grant Morrison does, right? Even when he wrote Batman, he always takes things from the 60s and tries to either make them either matter into a modern continuity, or, I mean... Even when he wrote Batman, he always takes things from the 60s and tries...
Yeah. Sorry, Spirit Scar, you were echoing.
What you say is so awesome that Spirit Spakar had to echo it.
I think he agrees with your point, Yucky.
Yeah.
I actually think that's what makes a lot of Grant Morrison books kind of hard to read sometimes. It's like, well, shit, I don't know the 30-year history of this one in particular dude, so I'm a little lost.
I say I didn't know like the deep Superman lore before reading All Star Superman though, but I mean there's so much there that it can be enjoyed by itself because there is what goes into just historical mythology as well, and it goes into the whole thing like the inner Earth. I mean that's a whole conspiracy theory, whatever, like unto itself too. So it's like the stuff's there. Like if you're like a hardcore Superman lore guy and you want to go deep into that, you don't need to be though, because there's enough in the story, regardless, that it can be enjoyed as its own thing. I don't think you have to be someone who's a deep cut Superman fan to enjoy All Star Superman, because I wasn't. Like I was never really a big Superman guy, honestly. But I appreciate just a well-written story, and when it's done well, like like Justice League: The New Frontier, I thought that was a really great DC animated movie that again like captured the spirit of that era, 1950s and all that. And so when a writer can just do it well and encapsulate it succinctly and present it, and you aren't shackled to decades of continuity, I think it's fine. You don't need to be in the know with every little detail. It's there for people who do know it, and they can get that thrill out of it. But I think a good writer can still communicate it and make it fresh and compelling, even if it's fucking weird. Because Bizarro stuff is gonna be weird to a new reader. It'd be
so what do you
I can understand. Like Pug, like if Pug hasn't found a Superman story yet that really represents the character and shows him a good light, I can see why something like this would be really hard. But
what do you guys?
We gotta show you For the Man Who Has Everything. That's a really good one.
So what do you guys think about the DC animated movie based on All Star Superman? Have any of you guys seen that? And did you notice it's extremely different to the comic book? I think, for example, Project and that Quintus guy, they're not really in it, and it's actually Lex Luthor who clones Superman at the end.
Yeah, I think they completely take out the Jimmy Olsen Doomsday thing.
Yeah, they also take out Bizarro World. Yeah.
It's much more
streamlined for an hour and 15 minutes. They also take out the Bizarro stuff, which I'm sure you guys appreciated. But I think they just condensed it. But I mean, I think it still captures the spirit of the book, And
I thought the Superman came across a little. I thought he came across a little more meaner.
I thought you were about to say creepy again, Twitless.
No. I think he comes across meaner because I remember the conflict with Solaris at the end, because in the book they point out where he says, "I know you turn good eventually, so I'm going to knock you out now and be pretty rough, but eventually I know you'll turn good." In the movie, if I recall correctly, he just like destroys Solaris, and Solaris says mercy. And in the comic, he says you'll live, I think, which is basically because he knows you're going to be an ally eventually. But I think in the movie, he just like destroys him, and it was just like, oh well, there goes that part of the characterization.
In the movie too, Lex Luthor does go to death row and is killed, and he clones Superman as a. I guess he almost has a come to Jesus moment and realizes that the world will always need Superman. So we don't really get that in the comic series either. I guess it's different.
The movie is definitely more streamlined, so it's more enjoyable in a sort of traditional way. But there were certain thematic, iconic things that were missing from the book.
I swear to God, Twitless, if I hear the word iconic one more freaking time,
I'm sorry,
time.
I need you to help me out though. What's the name
Superman is chock full of iconic moments and iconic images.
Smug?
Can't help
that Pug in the Superman outfit is pretty iconic. So
Smug, what's the name of Tim Lim's comic book company? My brain's just farting out on me.
It's called Shut the Fuck Up, Twitless. Comics.com. I went the whole stream without cursing, Twitless.
Sorry.
So I was just curious, the way Twitless and a few of the other guys were talking about like their version of Superman. I was just kind of curious on what colors your perception, like what material is what you have read that makes this seem so out of whack.
Well, for me, it was the movie that Richard Donner did, but then also the stuff in the 80s, the Dan Jurgens stuff, and the John Byrne stuff. I don't remember Lois ever being so slender. She'd always have like glasses on and like a gray suit that was like a knee high or something like that. I mean, she wasn't model quality. And then yeah, she was she was like a professional. Like she endeavored in her career, but she wasn't a Fox News anchor either. You know.
Wait, so I'm the creepy one, but you're the one who is like has a very particular taste for Lois Lane being just attractive enough.
Well, it's not creepy. I mean, it's just writing women more naturally, right? Like they're not
Actually,
all Twitch thoughts.
Well,
in the
Lois Lane is
original,
written well in this, I think.
in the John Byrne Man of Steel miniseries, he specifically put Lois Lane in like the most expensive New York gowns that he could find in magazines. Like she is supposed to, well, I guess in the 80s where everything is, you know, turned up to 11, I guess Lois Lane is supposed to be that person. But then I think you're saying Dan Jurgens did kind of make her look more normal.
Yeah, I mean that's just the image I have of her, and then of course how the character was played in the Richard Donner film. You know, she was quirky. You know, is the only way I could put it. She wasn't.
To me,
really
like Lois
modeled.
Lane in All-Star Superman was less bitchy than Lois Lane in the Superman Richard Donner movie, and that's always been Lois Lane's character. She's always been put herself in danger as a reporter. But remember the Max Fleischer cartoons? Lois Lane was very cute in those cartoons. Like she was attractive, you know.
Oh, she was hot. No.
I think in all future
We can
issues of
watch-
Superman, we need Lois Lane to be a big old fatty. Big old fatty.
Those Fleischer cartoons are public domain now. I'm pretty sure you can stream those.
Twitless, this has gone on for 2 hours and 50 minutes.
I
We're
didn't
not
say
streaming
now.
anything.
I didn't say now.
But yeah,
This is probably the longest time Superman's ever been talked about in a Comicsgate related stream.
Yeah,
Enjoying
that's not a bad thing.
I thought Lois Lane's character was consistent in All-Star Superman. Like as I have understood Lois Lane, it didn't. It seems like your issues that she was drawn attractive, but I'm fine with that. Draw her beautiful. Superman.
Yeah,
deserves a
I
beautiful woman.
liked. Yeah, I thought Lois was fine. I would have liked to have seen more depth to the romance, but other than that,
She was so
Yeah,
frivolous. I don't know.
I can see Well-Read's complaint because, I mean, Grant Morrison was trying to play on this, like, suspicion of, like, is this guy telling me the truth? Is this guy really Superman? And I suppose if you do want well, we're so used to the idea of Lois Lane dating Clark Kent before he reveals. And in the Silver Age, we're not talking about that at all. In the Silver Age, Lois Lane could give a crap about Clark. So that's why when he's like, oh, I'm Superman, she's like, okay.
yeah, it provides a chunk of the sort of dual. It's almost like sort of Spider-Man, conundrums of if I I can't have it all essentially.
Well, I really think the John Byrne, Dan Jurgens, they really humanized the Clark Kent, where I think the Silver Age, the Clark Kent was a facade. I do think he was pretending. He's not, I don't think Clark Kent matters that much as a character in the Silver Age. Like, you were reading a Superman book.
Or even like in the Superman TV show of the 50s, it also felt like Clark Kent was a facade. Like, he'd wink at the camera,
Right, he's pretending. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, is that an aberration of the character? Like, who were Joel Schuster and the other guy? I forget his name.
Siegel.
Jerry Siegel.
Jerry Siegel, yeah.
Siegel and
Who were
Schuster.
they envisioning when they came up with the idea of Clark and Superman? Were they just envisioning a cape guy flying around doing super things? And
Well, he didn't fly at first. He could just jump.
Okay, on the
His
alter
powers
ego.
were his powers were very much more limited. They actually specifically say that, nothing but an artillery shell could pierce his skin, and he could, leap tall buildings in a single bound. It was literally, he was jumping all the time.
Well, the point
And I do think I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. But so was the alter ego just an afterthought then for them?
Well, I believe the alter ego starts with the Zorro novel from 1918 when Don Diego, he pretends to be this weakish, foppish dude. That way no one suspects that he's El Zorro, right? And I think it became it became a trope, right, of having your character be a weaker version, and then they transform into, it's just something to throw off suspicion, I suppose. I'm not sure if originally there was a commentary. If there is a commentary, I imagine it's just you as the reader, you're a mundane dude on the sidewalk. Imagine if you're not the mundane dude. Imagine if you were different than everybody else around you, and you could jump into action.
It's been a while since I've read some of the early runs. It's really interesting seeing Lex's first appearance because he's just like a ginger. He's completely, the whole bald thing. That's not him. He's just a ginger mad scientist.
And that was a great moment with Lex Luthor in the book and All-Star Superman when he says like, oh, people like unconsciously imitate the Superman eyebrows, and then Lex Luthor like lost all his body hair and his niece points it out, and when he draws his eyebrows on, he unconsciously or consciously copies the Superman eyebrows. And again, it's a little moment like that speaks volumes of how Lex Luthor sees Superman, his hatred for him, but also emulating him in that moment, maybe they're consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah, I've always thought that was an interesting change of Luthor from being like the pudgy Donald Trump to actually wanting to exercise and be like, well, if I work hard, I can be as strong as not as strong as Superman, but I can change my body and it's going to be a product of my hard work.
It's probably, I'm wondering if there's some cross pollination from Captain Marvel Shazam as well, because Shazam started out Cell Superman for quite a while, so there might have been some of that. Dr. Savannah may be showing up too.
Yeah, if I can remember correctly, I think Luthor's first appearance actually isn't even a comic. I think it is in the chapter serial Superman and the Atomic Monster. I can't remember the name of it. I could be wrong about that, though. I don't have my Superman encyclopedia in front of me.
I just remember it was interesting back when Superman actually had vulnerabilities, because I think it's that first appearance of Luthor in the comics where like he knocks him out with like, sleeping gas, and it's like Superman's actually vulnerable to like a chemical weapon. It's much different. It's a much different. In the Fleischer
Cartoon Studios episode, he is pulling a train along, and these villains start throwing smoke bombs at him, and he starts coughing a lot, and he loses grip of the train.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He actually was like he had more vulnerabilities back then. They didn't need kryptonite. He had limitations.
But as far as I understand, it was the readers who kept on writing in. The readers wanted Superman to be better and better and better and stronger.
Yeah, makes
like
sense.
It wasn't really just something where the writers kept on. It's like the readers are like, well, why he should be able to throw a mountain? He's Superman.
Basically, Goku like, he just trains and gets stronger.
Because the Depression was so miserable, they just wanted a full-on power fantasy.
Yeah, you just want full-on power fantasy. It's not about any sort of realism. It's just about, just like when people complain about Superman spinning the world backwards in the movie. It's like, well, Superman didn't know. He didn't need to do it until that point. Like, Superman could goddamn do it if he needs to.
All right, I'm going to chill, and then I got to go to bed.
Yep.
So if you are looking for some classic superhero fun, there's my transition there. Feel free to check out The Adventures of Omega Girl, my love letter to superhero comics. And 24 pages. You can get it for $1.99 on indieplanet.com or $3.99 if you want a print copy. Like I said, I love superheroes, and I'm going to try to put out 3 issues this year. So I'm hoping people can enjoy the fun. So far, people who have liked it have said that it's a fun book, and that was my target. I wanted to have fun with superheroes. Other people said they were having fun with it, so let's all have fun. Thank you, guys. You've been a wonderful audience.
Well, thank you, Twitless, and hopefully one day soon we can do a 3-hour review on your book series.
Hooray!
I'm sure it didn't even take you 3 hours to write it.
I'm a slow writer.
Not according to Shane Davis, no.
2 days, that's it.
Crap that out while you're on the toilet, I'm sure. No, it's good. The book looks cool. Glad to hear all your thoughts and takes on a Twitless on All-Star Superman. Something to think about.
Thank you for the conversation. Thank you, Well Read. Thank you, Smug, for inviting me. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Yucky, for coming by. Thank you, all chat, for participating. Thank you, Vin Diesel, for reminding us about family. Thank you, Jabba, for reminding us why this is hell. And everyone else, again, it was great interacting with you all.
Oh
Thank you,
no,
Twitless.
thank you, Twitless.
I detect sarcasm. I don't appreciate that, sir.
That's actually Super Pug's powers. He has
Oh,
the
yeah, he's
power of
super
super
sarcastic.
sarcasm. Yeah.
You know, it's Bizarro Pug.
Well, thanks, Twitless. So it was great having you, and we'll see you again real soon.
Yep. Night, everybody.
All right.
Yeah, it was fun talking.
Great.
Oh no, as Twitless just left, he's tugging on my lead. Oh no, guys, help me! He's taking me with. I can't stop.
Well, with that, I'm going to probably wrap up this stream. I'll start up an after stream, as I can see people are desperate to come in and hang out if they want. I bet you anything, I'll start up an after stream and there won't be a single person in here. But I'll do that just in case people are interested. So thank you, everybody, for the chat on Superman. Thank you, Spirit Scar, for joining us for the review. Thank you very much, Yucky, for jumping in and giving us your thoughts. It was really valuable having you
Yeah, I
here.
really appreciate it.
Great discussion. We're almost on 3 hours, so I think that's a good even number to end on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll close this out. I'll say thank you and good day to both of you, and I'll play out our outro song, and then I'll start up another stream immediately after this for the sake of the chat, because I don't want you to feel neglected or ignored.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Spirit Scar.
Later, all.
All right, and I'll just bring up something to play us out on the outro. And hopefully everybody will join us on the after show, and thank you again. So have a good day. We might do this format again. We'll see how well this one does in the after live stream views. And if it proves to be popular, then we do have other books in mind for this more long form review format. So hopefully people will join us for that. Thank you very much, and have a good night.
I'm just a kid.